Okay, so it's 6:04, and I will now open the Wellfleet Board of Selectmen's meeting of March 4th at 6 PM at the Wellfleet Senior Center. This is a meeting on the town warrant, a first meeting on the town warrant and the articles. We will have announcements, open session, and public comment, starting from the board. And I also want to, I guess, my public announcement would be, welcome, Finance Committee, thank you for coming. It's good to see everybody.
Thank you. If I may, I just wanted to make a short statement.
Sure.
I owe the Select Board an apology for bailing out on the December meeting. But it has been my long-held opinion that that meeting takes place too early in the budget process for anything we might say to adequately inform the Select Board of anything. And we need to go through our process, at least get through those budgets that normally are presented in that meeting before we can do that. So my suggestion is that we look at rescheduling that meeting in the future. It was not ever my intent to not provide the feedback that you need. It just wasn't the right time.
Yeah, no, good, and we got your email, and thank you for the good communication on that. That's what it all comes down to, so thank you, and it is really important that we do get together. Right? What is this, executive, judicial, something like that? Different branches, so.
It's
great.
important that we fulfill our duty as an advisory
yeah.
committee.
Thank you. Any,
Madam Chair,
yes,
could maybe make an announcement that we're now on TV, so tell all your friends, so they get a better glimpse of what the budget process is like.
and especially if they're having trouble falling asleep at night. Not the finance, but I find all the meetings just hard to watch all the way through, but they are great, and thank you for doing that, too. It's not easy. Any announcements from the board, Select Board?
Yes, this is just a reminder that daylight savings time starts this Sunday, the 10th, and therefore our next meeting on March 12th will start at 7 o'clock.
Should we change that?
Well, we can't do it now. I'd be
Yeah,
happy
we
to.
could post it, but I'm sorry you remembered that or saw that.
Well, we agreed,
I
but we
know.
can change it at our next meeting, anyway.
Okay, thank you for bringing that up. I'm going to make a note of that. Any other announcements from the board? From the audience? Okay, well, then we will begin. And we will start with Article, you don't need to go over. Well, we'll just start with the, Article 1, right? Operating budget.
Mm-hmm.
How do we want to do this? Does our committee want to review it, read it for the audience?
So I will tell you that you have both agreed on the same budget with one exception. And if you're looking at the warrant in front of you, in the appendix, it is on page 32 of the warrant that's in front of you. On the recreation budget, and the number unfortunately is incorrect there. As far as the salary and wages, the total is correct for the recreation department, but the salaries and wages line item I need to correct on this. The Finance Committee reduced it by $6,400 in the salaries and wages line item. I can recap what the Finance Committee's opinion was, and then they can correct me if they would like to. The Recreation Department added $6,400 for additional programming related to the acceptance of the gift of the van from the school district. And the Finance Committee felt that something like that should be discussed in advance. When you accept a gift that's going to cause additional expenses in the future, it should be discussed in advance before we just automatically assume that we're going to accept the gift and we're going to add the money to the budget.
Should we talk about that now or wait for another meeting?
It's up to you if you want to talk about it right now.
Yeah.
I would say now, because it's been brought up.
Okay, yes, do you have any comment on it?
Yeah, so I listened to the finance committees, I got to go, I find finance committee meetings thrilling, but anyway, I was at that meeting, and some of the things that we brought up were also brought up. In other words, who's going to drive it, who's going to pay for it, how do we cover that? But more than that, these needs are already getting met. It seemed like a more convenient thing. Just because somebody gives you something doesn't mean we want to then take on that vehicle maintenance and get people, used to using it. And at the end of listening to these fine people, and more of them were there, discuss it, I thought to myself, just because something's offered to us doesn't mean we have to take it if it creates these other situations, and these needs are already getting met. So that's my thought about it right now.
So I know that the recreational director did explain that the counselors would be driving it. And I'm not sure, you can tell me how these needs are already being met, but I think that this is an age group, although I'm sure it's variable, that they are going out and doing other things. I can't remember exactly what they are. They're field trips. Is this the one where they're also doing, this is just in the summer rec program, right? Or this is the year-round one?
There were a number of, my understanding is there were a number of programs that were going to use it. But this is a, big hefty vehicle.
It is,
And when
yeah.
I say the needs are already being met, people are getting to these things that they want to get to, perhaps not all in a group. In other words, this is not going to make things possible that aren't possible now, as far as I understand. They might make them more convenient or not.
So maybe at our next meeting, or soon thereafter, Becky could come in and explain it a little, or clarify it. But I do think that, especially with young teenagers, getting together as a group driving, parents are often working. It just seems like a nice thing to do to keep people invigorated mentally and experientially, and a good, nice, clean way to do that. We don't have a rec center as of now, and maybe we should ask Becky to come back and clarify it a little more. She did kind of brush over it, or went over it quickly.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
One of the points that our committee brought up in our discussion about it that may or may not have been considered by your committee or by the rec director is a free van is all very nice and good. However, a van has an infinite life. It does not have an infinite life.
Yeah.
And when it comes time to replace that van, the town is going to feel it necessary to continue that service, and we will then be, not to mention that we'll have to license and insure this van, and then we will be on the hook for replacement value for the foreseeable future. Not that, this is something that absolutely should not be done, but we did not feel that this had been very carefully considered.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Has an official gift been submitted to the town? Has the van?
No, it is not. My intent was, when the gift was offered, was to bring it to the Board of Selectmen and ask them to accept the gift.
Right, but the town does have to vote to accept it at town meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay.
If it's
Yes,
not,
I
it's
believe-
not a big amount of money, does it? Do we have to?
I'd have to find out what the value of the van is.
Okay, yeah. Justina?
Madam Chair, through you, as the parent of children who've gone through the Nauset schools, I'm not sure why the needs are being met, and I think that's why the van was gifted. For families not affluent and intact enough to provide transportation, there have been cutbacks. There's no more late bus at Nauset. So for those kids that can get driven, that's fine, but a lot of kids can't, and they're often at risk. they're from families that are struggling. And in terms of a long-term obligation of a gift of 2 vans, I would look at it more like a pilot program,
Two
and they're
vans
not.
now? We
if-
heard 1 van. What's the actual gift?
I looked more at the $6,500
The
request.
$6,500 was for
Steve, can I
salary.
finish? Thank you. I looked more at the $6,500 amount that is in question. And in a town that has an opiate problem and problems of struggling families, I feel Becky Rosenberg has made creative use of the elementary school for programs, and we have now a free van. And given the tiny amount of funds, I should hope that we can find a way as a town to appropriate that.
Kathleen?
I'm in support of the van. I think it's an added benefit to the recreation department to get kids from A to B in a town that, doesn't have public transportation in the winter months. But with all due respect, I do understand the position of the Finance Committee. A van not only, on a long-term range thing here, but, it's going to need maintenance, and there's associated costs with owning a van. So I do agree with them that I think this issue or item, particular line item in the rec budget should have been discussed a little bit more in detail with the Finance Committee, but I am in support of the van.
So I would suggest that we ask the rec director to come back and explain it more, and then see if anyone could come up with some estimates of how much it is and then where that money would come from. Right? Mr. Hort, what do you say to that?
That'd be fine. You can make your recommendation on the budget. You can do that at your meeting at the 12th, on the 12th, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
and we'll get back to you, but I agree. I mean, it was kind of brushed over or quickly. It was not explained. It wasn't brushed over. It
This
was
is-
not explained well.
This
And-
is simply our, we're.
Well, that's, I
we're-
was counting on you guys to
feedback.
catch it. So, good. So are you saying that we can vote this whole thing, since we agree, and except for this one item, we can vote all the budget items
You
as
can vote
one
the budget
to recommend?
as a whole. Yes, you can vote to recommend it.
Okay.
So I have a
Mike?
I have, revealing my ignorance once again. We have a number of articles that are for various vehicles, right? And they're in, they're separate articles. And then they're in the capital budget. So if we just vote this whole thing, we're going to be voting those vehicles through. And then I would like to discuss the vehicles in more detail, because a number of them were very carefully explained. For example, the extremely expensive but probably very worthwhile ladder truck for the fire department, very carefully. We understood a lot about
Madam
that.
Chair.
But some of the others not.
Any item that requires borrowing, even if it is on the capital budget,
Has to be,
is a separate article, and we voted on each of those individually, so we can cover those as individual warrant articles.
okay. So
Okay.
we shouldn't just wave the whole budget through right now. We should.
Well, there's the operating budget,
Yeah.
and that's what he's talking
No,
about.
I'm
You
looking
can
at the
vote whole.
capital budget.
So article, where are we?
Madam Chair, may I make a suggestion?
Yes, you may.
You certainly, since you all are in agreements with your budget, it's your budget. If you wanted to do a waiver, we've made our decisions, so whatever we've done will be reflected in the town warrant. But if you want to just vote the whole budget, you certainly can do that.
You can always amend it on town meeting floor.
True. You know Helen.
What?
So what you could do is you could
we
move
could.
to recommend the budget, to approve the budget and recommend it this evening. You could revisit it on the 12th if you want to. You don't have to. That's your option.
Or you could move to recommend the budget that the Finance Committee put forward.
And what I'm trying to look at now is this is up to Article 3, the capital budget. Are we going to go into, does this include marina enterprise budget, water
Those are
enterprise? This doesn't, this is just our, yeah, so you know it's just up to here.
So you want me to make a motion?
Sure.
Everybody ready?
For the operating budget?
And yes, speak into the mic, please, as you know, for the operating budget, right?
Article 1 for fiscal year 2020, the operating budget. I move to recommend and insert this into the town warrant.
Second?
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Your transfers, Article 2. Any comments or questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
There are frequently changes to those and additions, so the
Okay.
Finance Committee typically holds off until our pre-town meeting and makes our recommendation for on-town meeting floor.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, however, looking at this tonight, is there anything that catches your eye? Oh, 5 people on the FinCom.
Not especially.
Okay, well, there's something that caught my eye. I'm wondering why the Housing Authority, who has a pretty good-sized fund, and I'm looking at our town administrator, why they're asking for $15,000 for counsel, for legal fees, when they have all this money in a fund.
So the Housing Authority is funded through the budget, Budget 189. They're funded through the budget of having $5,000 a year. The town and the Housing Authority are currently both defending a lawsuit,
Right.
and it is using up that entire $5,000. And I don't believe that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund may be used for those legal fees.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Article 2, how do we want to proceed?
Yeah.
Move to recommend?
Madam
Yes?
Chair, we've had a
You don't
few
have to, Dan.
additional questions for Dan before, and so we have not yet voted our recommendation on that budget.
Yeah, that's okay. And again, this is the first time we will probably be talking about this for the next month and a half.
What do you mean wait?
We hope to settle it on Wednesday.
Okay, good, good. So may I have a motion from our board? You guys ready to vote to recommend this? Anyone want to make a motion? Go for it,
Article
Kathleen.
2 for fiscal year 2019 year transfers, to see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds and/or authorize the transfer from various line items within the current appropriations, such sums of money necessary to supplement the operating and/or capital budgets of various town departments for the current fiscal year 2019, or do not act anything thereon.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Say aye.
This is a
Aye.
cliffhanger.
Okay. I think this group needed a little cup of coffee before they came.
I got one.
Okay. Hence you making the motions. Okay, Article 3, fiscal year 2020 capital budget. Would the Finance Committee like to say anything about this?
I'm sorry, I
Recommend
thought we
anything?
were addressing that a few minutes ago. So that is the one we have not looked at. Well, we've looked at, but we have not voted our
And that's
recommendation
all
on yet.
the fire trucks and large,
No,
which is that?
any item that requires borrowing appears as a separate warrant article, and we have looked at those. And we have voted our recommendation on almost all of those.
So, Madam Chair, if you look on page 34 of your warrant that's in front of you, you will see the FY 2020 capital budget. So the items that are all the way to the right that say borrow have their own separate separate article. The ones that are on the raise and appropriate, or in the other column that say shellfish fund or beach fund, are all included in Article number 3.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
only the ones that are borrowing articles that are separated out and each have their own article.
Go ahead, Helen.
So, vehicles grow old and they have to be replaced, and it's eternal. However, I had sort of an interesting moment where I added up all the vehicles that are included in our capital budget this year, including 2 vehicles that have absolutely no use unless you repair the equipment on it, the forestry truck and the shellfish barge, which is arguably a vehicle, right? And it came to $1,502,915. Now, we don't think about it like that. That's all vehicles, okay? And
That's a bargain.
what?
That's a bargain for equipment.
Yes, but here's my point. We have a policy that was sort of invented by Dennis Murphy when he was on the FinCom. That's a very good policy that says if you're going to change over vehicles, they have to be vetted in a certain way. Has this happened with all these vehicles this year? I didn't hear anything like that at the FinCom meetings, but then I only started going recently.
Madam Chair, first of all, there is backup information in your notebook for most of the vehicles, all submitted by individual departments, and most of them are replacements.
Yes, but was it vetted according to that policy? That's my question.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
may I?
Mr. Pellicci.
Yes, it was vetted. We have confidence in the employees that put together the rollover policies and also the maintenance of of the equipment.
Okay.
So that's enough vetting, I would think.
And Madam Chair, through you, particularly as pertains to the borrowing articles, but for virtually all of the vehicles, there have been postponements made in purchasing and replacing some of these vehicles, and those postponements are coming home to roost. And
Yeah.
this is just one of those
What word are you
years.
using? Postponderance?
Postponements.
Postponements, okay.
Postponements,
That was a new
I'm
word.
sorry.
Yeah, I agree that it was kind of policy not to ask for new vehicles for a while, and then that's what I figured, there are a lot this year, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
may I make a suggestion on Article 3 that I would like to wait on our recommendation? I'd like to insert the article, but wait on the recommendation until we have a final recommendation from the Finance Committee on the capital budget.
does everyone like that idea?
Yeah, especially if we have some way of knowing what your reflections on this are.
Okay,
You might be meeting on Wednesday about this.
You can also call me at home anytime you have questions about the budget.
You wanna-
349-3400.
You want to take that on?
Sure.
okay, so we'll just postpone it, yes.
Steve, that's generous, but do you want all of us calling you?
Sure.
He's also not home all the time.
When do you go to bed?
As long as you promise ice cream.
Okay, so we will postpone Article 3, our
I'm going to move
recommendation?
to insert it on the warrant, but
Yes,
postpone our
Recommendation.
recommendation.
okay. Is
So I move Article 3 fiscal year 2020 capital budget to be placed on the town warrant, and we will recommend at a later time.
there a second?
Second?
All in favor? Thank you. Okay, Article 4, Marina Enterprise Budget. Any questions? Comments?
I'd like to make a comment. Great job. Support this budget.
Yeah, I don't think there's so anybody want to move to recommend this warrant article?
I move to recommend well, are we all done with it?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty
Yeah.
cut
I
and
move to
dry.
recommend the Article 4, the FY 2020 Marina Enterprise Fund budget,
Second?
All in
Could you
favor?
also say to insert it in the warrant?
and to insert it in the warrant. Thank you.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Moving along. We now go to Article 5, the Water Enterprise Budget. Any questions or comments? The Finance Committee, I will say for our audience, has recommended this 7-1. They recommended the previous one 8-0. Any questions about funding the Water Enterprise Budget?
I'd like to know what the minority vote was about.
Stephen?
Yes, I'm the last holdout for the wishing that the Water Enterprise Fund could use their base service fee feature of their current rules and regulations on their, for the water supply system. I will point out, in terms of a water supply system, this town has a pretty good deal. I've made these recommendations before, and I'm a minority in this, which I don't mind because I like being a minority. This feature, it's similar to what co-ops do when they have a budget shortfall. They take the shortfall and divide it by the number of units. So in this case, it would be the number of existing hookups and anybody who signed a contract to hook up. Last year, the rough calculation was about 310 more dollars per unit, which could have been taken and distributed over those who use it, as opposed to bringing it to town meeting for more money. So,
Thank you.
thank you for letting me share that with you all.
No, I think that's a good idea. I would add that next year, once the short-term tax fee
Right.
shows that that will fall into the water, the 2 3/4% that water will get, and that's going to solve all of our problems.
I don't know.
Madam
about
Chair?
But wait, next year we'll change it, yes.
Madam Chair, respectfully, I don't think it's going to do anything.
Okay, I'm just,
For that.
I'm just kidding. You couldn't see my smile, my
No.
exaggerated smile.
No.
But we would, that's when other things might happen, that it'll be better taken care of. Okay, so do we have a motion to recommend the water enterprise budget?
I move that we recommend Article 5, the fiscal year 2020 water enterprise budget, and insert it in the warrant.
Second?
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Article 6, prior year's invoices. 9/10 vote required by town meeting to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and transfer from available funds for the purpose of paying prior year unpaid bills or take any action thereof. Finance Committee recommends 8-0. Any questions or comments?
Yes. This is the first moment at which I found a typo. And unfortunately, until it gets voted at the ballot, we are consistently called the Board of Selectmen on official documents. In other words, the town voted to do it, but we have to vote again at the ballot to make it all Select Board. And so it's that way at the end of most of these articles requested by this Board of Selectmen, recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Here, there's like what amounts to a typo requested by the Select Board, which I hope we will be called officially by next year. So if somebody could,
I will correct that wherever it appears in the warrant.
and there are a lot of typos, so this is
This
my,
has not been, this has not gone
This
through
still
town.
says
Rough
draft, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's still a
it does.
draft.
It's a
But
draft.
last
That's why
year-
we're doing this.
yeah, it's just the only time I'm going to mention it. Okay?
Good, thank you. So, can I have any comments on the text or the content? May I have a motion?
I move that we insert Article 6, that we approve Article 6, prior year invoices, and insert it in the warrant.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. And Article 7, firefighters union contract.
Articles 7, 8, 9, and 10, I will not have a dollar amount for you yet, so you can insert these into the warrant, and if you would like, you can withhold your recommendation until town meeting.
Okay,
Madam Chair, that's, we're withholding until we have the actual number.
okay. So do we need a vote for that, or we'll just postpone?
You can insert them into
Okay.
the warrant,
I
and then
move-
just withhold your recommendation.
I move that we insert Article 7, Article 8, Article 9, and Article 10 as printed in this draft warrant.
Second?
All in favor? Thank you. And, someone say
Yeah, I
something?
have a question
Mhm.
about this. Dan, so my hopes are that these numbers are not going to be given to us at that little meeting right before town meeting so that we can actually think about them.
So, as you recall, last Tuesday, we had an executive session where we discussed them. Once I got a general gist of that
Yeah.
you were in agreement of the direction, I will now be able to go to each of this unions, and we'll sign an MOU, which will come to you long prior to the
That would
select
be
board.
great. Thank you.
Okay, Article 11, additional fire department staff, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and transfer from available source of funds, $149,980.
So one of
don't
the
need to
things
recall me.
that the fire chief and I have been talking about is there is money in the ambulance fund, and his thought was that we fund one of these via an override, and that one of them could be funded through the ambulance fund. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that covers it for 1 year. It doesn't necessarily mean that the following year there's money in the ambulance fund that we could pay for it. So similar to accepting a gift, we're making a commitment here. If we accept this and accept that we hire 2 additional firefighters, we are making a commitment. So the first year we can pay for at least one of them out of the ambulance fund. And then the second year, we would expect that each of them would be paid for out of the general fund.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
at this time, I would recommend that perhaps the fire chief would like to speak to this.
I was going to say too. Yes, good call, Chair Janet.
Thank you very much, both boards, town administrator. It is not uncommon in many communities to tap into an ambulance fund to pay for certain expenses. It's done all over the Commonwealth. A number of fire departments have done it. We have not done this in the past. We've done it, we tapped into it to replace an ambulance, to purchase some equipment from time to time, and the town does, through the regular budget process, takes some money from that fund every year to go and help balance the overall operating budget. My suggestion is to try this. I expect that we will continue to see the ambulance fund increase in its balance. We're a good couple years out before we have to replace another ambulance. I think that with the additional staff that we hope to get, it's been my experience that we end up with an increased ambulance revenues every year, because we're not turfing off calls to mutual aid ambulances. We're collecting the revenue from Wellfleet ambulance calls. So while I can't predict the future, my thought was to rework this warrant article to have a 2.5 override for one position, then ask for a second warrant article to get the townspeople's support to fund one position out of the ambulance fund. Because I've always, since I've been here, it's important from my perspective that the townspeople, the taxpayers, know that we're adding a position. And I would ask for their buy-in. And so they know where we're at. That just gives me a chance to get up and tell the sad story one more time. But I think this is a good compromise in terms of trying to balance out what we have for revenues coming in from the ambulance fund, and also, an override for the one position. So those are my thoughts.
Okay, Kathleen?
Janet, through you, Madam Chair, to Chief Pauley, how does your grant play into this?
Well, first of all, the grant is nowhere near guaranteed.
I know that part.
However, if we apply for the grant, if we do receive the grant, then upon receipt of that grant, we would hire these 2 positions that are hopefully already approved at town meeting, and the grant would cover, again, 75% of both of those positions, the cost of both those positions for the first year, 75% for the second year, and then 35% for the third year. So if we are fortunate enough to receive the grant, which again is not guaranteed, but that gives us a significant amount of seed money, if you will, to help offset these costs.
And you've applied for this particular grant before?
I have.
And you were successful?
Yes,
I think you'll hit it twice.
I hope so.
Don't go away.
Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
We lost 2 paramedics this year, correct?
We've lost 2 in the last year and 14 months, I guess. Yes, that's correct.
Well, isn't there some money left from those salaries?
Well, there really isn't, because we're at a point where we have to backfill those positions, because we still need to have 2 paramedics on duty 24/7. So yes, there's a little bit of money, but that's going to be absorbed by overtime, because we have to backfill those open shifts.
You know, I'm in favor of your wanting 2 more paramedics, but, so you already have 2 positions open, right?
No, we have 1 position open right now.
Oh, you already hired someone to fill the other one?
Yes, that happened last year. The position that's open now was only open as of yesterday. The individual left yesterday.
So you have 1 position open. So we wouldn't need 2 more paramedics, would we? We don't need 1.
That's correct.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
I have a question. There was some intricacy in your explaining that maybe it would be an EMT, and this language, you know, it might be a firefighter, paramedic, or EMT, and this language in this article only has firefighter, paramedic. You could not use this money for an EMT.
I would certainly get with the town administrator as soon as possible. We would just rework the language to make sure that we're covered appropriately. But again, what I'd like to
So, forgive me, I need to understand, you do want there to be EMT included in this, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
But again, I'm trying to treat this as 2 separate, it's important that we treat this as 2 separate questions. One for the override of a position, or to approve that position. The other question would come out of the ambulance fund receipts.
So this would be another article, right? Madam Chair, through you to
Yes,
the
if
town.
you would, I would suggest you not take any action on this one tonight.
Okay,
And the chief and I will bring back 2 articles to you, one for funding through an override and one for funding through an ambulance fund.
Okay,
Okay.
great, thank you.
So, Madam Chair, for the minutes and the television audience, why don't we just state that Article 11, additional fire department staff will seek no action tonight?
Perfect. All right,
Chair,
yes,
may I just say that, watching your budget process through the Finance Committee, thank you for thinking up creative ways to keep the town of Wellfleet safe.
I even have more good news for you on a couple articles down the line here, so.
good, thanks. Article 12, Chapter 90 road repairs. Any comment or questions?
Madam Chair, we are awaiting a final number on this,
Okay.
if one is forthcoming.
And Mr. Hort, do you have any comment for that?
One will be forthcoming, but it will not be forthcoming tonight.
So we are withholding our recommendation to town meeting.
And does our board want to withhold or postpone,
Or just insert the article.
or, yeah,
I move
any
to,
questions? Do you want to just insert it?
yeah, I mean,
It's
well,
pretty,
you know, we get money from the state, I can always recommend that, but if you want to just insert it and have to vote on it at our next meeting,
okay,
I move that we insert Article 12, Chapter 90, road repairs, into the annual town meeting
is there a
warrant.
second?
Second?
All in favor? Thank you. Article 13, capital improvement. This is about appropriating a sum of $525,000 for paying the cost of purchasing and initially equipping a ladder truck for the fire department. Any questions, comments?
Madam
Comments
Chair?
from the board, from the finance? Yes.
The Finance Committee voted to recommend this. However, this is the article that the chief was just speaking about, wherein he has some potential very good news. So perhaps he'd like to speak to
Okay.
that.
Good, thank you.
So briefly, what we're trying to do is replace a used ladder truck. When I say used, we purchased it used in 2000. And it was a 1986. It's 34 years old. It's literally falling apart, and it has a tremendous amount of rust on it. It's no longer cost effective to maintain. I have been looking for the last 2 years for another used ladder truck that is in good shape, that meets today's standards. We have the possibility, the strong possibility of picking one up that's in good shape. I don't want to mention where it is right now because I don't want to tip our hands. But I've been working with our folks up at Greenwood Fire Apparatus, who have been a partner of ours in terms of replacing ambulances and buying new fire apparatus. So at this point, I've sent the town administrator just this afternoon a rework of this article, and I don't know if he's had a chance to look at it, but the new amount is $285,000.
Woo! If we get it, that would be great, so. Do we want to,
No, I was just
Oh,
crossing
you
my
want-
fingers.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
285.
Sorry, Madam
okay.
Chair.
Madam Chair,
Kathleen,
through you
yeah.
to Mr. Chief Pauly. You're going to hear this from me for the next year or so. And that's the word regionalizing our labor force for fire safety and police safety and vehicles and so on and so forth. I just don't see how small-town municipalities going into the future are going to be able to handle the costs of keeping a labor force and the equipment that is needed for probably, 8 or 12 weeks out of the year. Having said that, what are the possibilities of us sharing a ladder truck? Is that just unheard of, or?
It's not unheard of. The issue is, if you look at ladder trucks, there's one in Provincetown, ours, and then the next one is in Orleans, and then Brewster. So the way it's kind of, at least on the Outer Cape, it's like every other community has a ladder truck. And it's not unheard of that one of those aerial trucks, ladder trucks, is out of service for a period of time for maintenance or a major breakdown. So we kind of share them, but we're paying for it, quite frankly.
Right, well, I'm actually very proud that we're one of the other communities that has a ladder truck, and thank you for your diligence on finding something just a little bit cheaper. I'm hoping you'll get to kick the tires soon.
Well, the plan is that to go up and look at it, it's in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We'll look at it in the middle of March. It's incumbent upon the other community replacing their ladder truck and it all coming together. But we've had some good discussions, and there seems to be a real desire to work together. So
Good.
we just have a bunch of hoops we have to successfully navigate.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? May I have a motion to insert this article?
So if I can just
yes.
interrupt for 1 second. What the chief is proposing, then what we would do is on the second line where it says the cost of purchasing and initially equipping, and then it would say a used aerial ladder pumper truck for the fire department. So those are the words that we would actually put into the warrant.
Used ladder.
Pumper truck.
A used aerial ladder pumper truck.
Okay. Can I have a motion? Do we?
You got it?
I move we approve Article 13, capital improvement, and insert it in the warrant.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Article 14, capital improvement, to see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $265,000 for the purpose of, for purchasing and initially equipping a street sweeper for the DPW. Anyone want to speak to that? Kathleen?
I'm interested to see what the Finance Committee recommended on this, but I'm assuming it's another one of those high-priced vehicles that we have been kicking down the road and haven't been replacing.
That's correct. This is through you, Madam Chair, this is one of those vehicles that the postponement of replacement has,
You're moving to recommend this?
we are.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I guess I should be asking questions from the audience, but I don't really, nobody's had any questions, had they? Sounds good, okay. Justina?
Is this going to be a used purchase or a brand new?
This one will be new.
The
It was
issue-
originally $320,000. And DPW director has been able to find one for $265,000. That is new.
The issues with this type of truck, through you, Madam Chair, the issues with this type of truck make it such that purchasing a used one, because it's a vehicle that holds water, purchasing a used one doesn't make any sense for us.
They're usually done.
Yeah, and sand. Okay, so, yes, Helen?
Yeah, so as we're working on this, like with the article previous to this, put a new street sweeper, so that, you see, insert new
Okay.
for street sweeper. Just yet another question not to answer at town meeting. The other thing is, these are all capital improvements, but could we have some little mini 2-word or 3-word tag after capital improvements, so busy people can find
Sure.
the article, just to identify it?
Yep.
So you would say capital improvements, DPW street sweeper?
Yeah.
That's the tag you'd like?
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify.
One more question, Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody has the answer to this, but what's the depreciation schedule on this sweeper? 10 years?
Let me see if I've got paperwork on that.
At the top of your head.
Not off the top of my head.
The other one went 10 years.
2009 it's 10 years old,
Yeah.
the one we've got now.
Thank you, Helen.
So this is what we've,
And I believe the recommended period for replacement for one of these is 6 years, not 10.
5 to 7.
Wow.
Yeah, and we've put a lot of money into repairing it. I don't have that here, but I think we're 3 years beyond its
And Madam Chair, if I may
That's
add,
interesting.
and this is not the type of vehicle that can be leased, because that was a question that FinCom had.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Can I have a motion from our board?
I move Article 14, capital improvement, to be recommended and inserted in the warrant.
Second?
All in favor? Okay, thank you. Moving on to Article 15, to see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $220,000 to fund equipping a front-end loader for the DPW. Any comments or questions?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is essentially the same issue. This vehicle, the vehicle we are replacing was purchased in 2005. And again, this is this is equipment, not just a vehicle, and therefore it cannot be leased.
Any questions, comments from the Select Board?
Yeah, possibly could we put cannot be leased at the end in the summaries for these two articles? I'm just all for not having to answer the questions at town meeting.
Yeah,
You're assuming that people read.
All right.
Want a motion, Madam Chair?
Yes, I do, please.
Article 15, capital improvement, I move to recommend and insert on the warrant.
Is there a second? I'll second it. All in favor? Thank you. Article 16, capital improvement, to appropriate the sum of $75,000 for the purchase, for the cost of purchasing and equipping a 100-yard refuse recycling trailer for the DPW. Any questions or comments on that?
What is that?
So
Is that-
I'm, if Mr. Horton knows about it, or someone from the Finance Committee, but I'm going to let you speak to it.
so this is the,
If it's,
when trash is emptied in
Yeah,
to
that's
a bin, in a sense, it's emptied into this trailer, which then can be hooked up to a cab and hauled away. So this is the actual trailer that gets dumped into, and then you take this off Cape when you're hauling your trash.
I thought so, and I guess we need another one.
Yes.
Yes, okay. I just wanted to be sure what it was, because it looked like
I was
one.
wrong. I would have said the wrong thing, so, good.
Dan, Janet,
Yes.
sorry. Dan, it says refuse/recycling, so it has a dual purpose? Because I know that our recycling markets are
Depending
changing.
on the flow of trash versus recycling, it could be used for either.
Thank you.
All right, may I have a motion?
I move that Article 16, capital improvement, be approved and inserted in the warrant.
Second?
All in favor? Thank you. Article 17, capital improvement, see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $40,000 for the paying the cost in purchasing and initially equipping a police cruiser for the police department and for the payment of all other costs incidental and related to that. Any questions or comments, or maybe the Finance Committee would like to comment?
Madam Chair, the police department has always, or at least in all of my years in this town, had a very careful schedule of replacement for its vehicles. I believe that this is not a borrowing article, but will be paid for out of existing funds, because it does not say borrow.
This is actually a borrowing.
Oh, this is?
It is a borrowing article, yes.
Is this the first time we've borrowed for a police vehicle?
Could be.
Well, in any case, the police department has maintained a careful schedule of vehicle replacement. They basically replace one cruiser a year, and it
think so, yeah.
keeps us from having to expend a lot of money on multiple vehicles every year. And that kind of, that kind of fiscal responsibility is something that we support.
Very good. And I also will say to the audience that I'm skipping over this a bit, but if I haven't mentioned it before, the Finance Committee is recommending these articles 8-0. Any other questions, or can I have a motion?
I move Article 17.
Oh,
Sorry,
Helen has a
Kathleen, I
question,
did have a question.
comment.
Sorry. So you just said something, how many vehicles does the police department have?
6.
6. So every 6 years, they get a new one.
Correct, they're replaced on a 6-year schedule.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
All right, may I have a motion, please?
I move Article 17, capital improvement, be recommended by the Board of Selectmen and inserted on the warrant.
Second. All in favor?
I'm sorry, who was the second?
I'm the second,
You're the
because
second on that
everybody
one.
else is too slow.
Sleep at the wheel.
And I can second, I can make a motion too, but usually the chair doesn't. So, speed it up.
Me?
No, you're doing it, yeah. So Article 19, to see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of 50,000. Oh, okay,
18.
that right. To see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $25,175 for the purpose of purchasing and installing a new awning over the bandstand at the pier. Are there any questions or comments? Finance Committee is recommending to withhold till town meeting.
That's correct. We had some questions about whether this was going to be built by town resources, AKA the DPW, or whether it in fact needed to be done at all, and that the bandstand could in fact be an open structure. And we wanted to
Janet,
take
if
a
I
little
may.
more time.
Okay,
We also wanted to know if the family that donated it in honor of a person might want to have some say into, if not, that's fine, but we wanted to know if that was asked of the man who donated it, and
yeah,
it's a memoriam of his wife, I believe.
good idea. I was thinking that too. So I think it's just an awning. It's nothing that they actually build, right? It's not like a wooden, it's
Canvas that goes on. the
canvas, right,
awning.
okay. So that's probably, yeah. Any questions or anyone else on the Finance Committee? Anyone? Yep, Kathleen?
Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Hort, is this something that could be paid for out of community preservation funds?
It's possible that it could be. It would have to happen next year because they've closed their grant application.
yeah, I
cycle, but
realize
it's
that.
possible that it could be done next year.
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe that community preservation funds need to be used for permanent structure. I don't know if an awning
Yeah,
would
Oh,
qualify
considered
for that.
Yeah,
that's
gotcha.
right. Gary can speak to that.
Good catch.
Who's chair of the CPC?
Gary Serkin, Chair of the CPC. You're correct, it has to be for capital expenditure and not for operating. But we have an example that this year we'll get to in a little while, which is the permanent awning over the ball field, the playground.
The permanent structure, or semi-permanent structure.
So whoever is considering this, we might want to do the same consideration, because they originally came to us with the idea of a soft, and we
That's right,
persuaded them to look at, and it turned out to be at the same price for something that would be permanent and have a long lifespan. So for 25,000, we may be able to get a permanent one as opposed to a temporary one.
Who's in charge of the awning? DPW or
Rec.
Rec? Is it at the pier, at the bandstand? Well, why don't we again get more information on this from Rec? See
Madam
if they
Chair,
can
through you, if I
postpone
could
it.
just,
Yes, please.
and I don't mean any disrespect to the family that donated this to the town as a gift. However, it does stand as an example of some things that can cause more later on.
No, I agree, and that's one of the things with accepting a gift. So have you asked our executive secretary or town administrator to write them a letter or contact them, or would you like to contact the family?
I believe that is the select board's,
Yeah,
probably
okay.
best
So you-
done through
you
the
haven't-
select
You
board.
haven't taken
We
to
have
the
not.
next step?
The
Okay.
rec, Suzanne or Becky. Because it's really a recreation.
Okay, all right, we'll figure it out. It could be the rec director.
In any case,
It could be anybody, but
It
it's not
doesn't make sense for an advisory board to do
Yeah.
that.
Okay. All right.
Well, Madam Chair, may I, do we want to postpone this article?
Yes, I do. Yeah,
Yeah, not insert it, not
More informa-
recommend it,
yeah.
just postpone it?
yeah.
No action.
No action. Thank you, Helen. No action.
You still want it in the warrant, though.
They're not taking any action
Right.
tonight.
And we'll ask, again, the rec director to clarify a couple of things. Okay, Article 19, capital improvement to appropriate the sum of $50,000 for the purpose of paying the cost of buildings and grounds improvements to the town hall and library and grounds at the Wellfleet Library, library building, I should say, and grounds at the Wellfleet Library. Any questions or comments about that?
Yeah, my first question is, did the FinCom see this article and say, weigh on it?
We did, we voted to recommend, and I believe Dan can elaborate more carefully on, or more completely on what it covers.
Okay, Madam Chair? I'm unhappy that these two properties, both of which I spend a lot of time walking around, and I'm very familiar with them and what state they're in or not, are lumped together like this. $50,000 is a chunk of change, and I personally don't think that either property looks shabby enough to spend that much money on. The people who are landscaping on both properties, both properties look nice. The sidewalk at the library is fine. I'm glad that the steps got fixed. And $50,000 is a big chunk of change. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I don't think I would vote for this.
Kathleen?
Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Hort, is this a borrowing article?
Yes, wait a minute. Yes, it is.
So it does say on the back, under the summary, that there's $30,000 for town hall basement flooring, $8,000 for library restrooms, and the parking lot and sidewalks around the library building. That is not a lot of money for those three different things, and that would be my comment on it. The Finance Committee does recommend it, and they usually look into that. Yeah, I would think that the flooring would include the stairs, but I could be wrong. But it costs money. Yes.
Fixing up the library restrooms for $8,000, I get that.
Eight, okay. Yeah,
$8,000, I get that. I have no problem with the floor downstairs at Town Hall. I mean, in the basement. I think that that linoleum is kind of retro. It's not in terrible shape. It doesn't depress me. And that's all I have to say. $8,000 for the bathrooms at the library, fine. The rest of it, doesn't, I don't get why we're doing it.
Mr.,
Chair.
I'm just going to call you Steve.
I believe the basement might have a water issue. This is also
Yes.
preventative maintenance. The library is a very popular place. It gets a lot of use. And this is money that's spending now so that we don't have bigger problems down the line.
And I suppose we could ask the DPW to come in to go into more detail, but, if you're repairing the parking lot and the sidewalks, then you're going to need a little grading or a little reseeding of the lawn and I mean, how old is that town hall basement flooring? That's redundant, I don't want an answer. Yeah, rhetorical.
Town
Yeah.
hall or what?
It's redundant, yeah. So, okay, so any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a recommendation or insertion into the,
We're going to get, somebody raised the issue of getting some more information on why it was necessary down there and on the town basement flooring. Do we want to take no action for now?
I feel it's pretty reasonable. But anyhow, Mr. Hort, do you have any comment on the costs?
I think the cost is reasonable. I would also say, times that our public works staff gets criticized for not maintaining buildings, and they're trying to be proactive and maintain the buildings. So if you decide not to, just remember this article when somebody comes up later and says, why aren't you doing this? So.
And I will add that even though the basement floors may seem fine and retro to Helen, there are a lot of people down there that meet a lot of meetings, the public, other volunteers, and employees. And I just thought it was so nice when the linoleum was replaced in the first floor and second floor. It just really, and getting repainted. I mean, having a building spruced up is also good for morale. Yes, Jerry?
Well, I spend a lot of time at the library, and that parking lot certainly needs to be redone. And over on the other side, there's some work that needs to be done, and the restrooms are deplorable.
Yeah.
They really need to be done. So I certainly support this article.
Would you like to make a motion? Oh, you want one more?
Yeah, first of all, it was rugs on the first and second floor, and they were allergy.
No, they did the linoleum.
They replaced
They
they
replaced
replaced the carpet with the linoleum.
Oh, all right.
With wood, fake, whatever it
Yeah.
is. I feel that we don't have to swallow this whole. I would be up for simply having this be the pavement at the library. The sidewalks are really fine, and they look fine to me, and I use them all the time, and the bathrooms, and not to swallow this whole.
Okay, well, I'll just say that the Finance Committee does recommend 8-0.
Correct.
Kathleen?
I'd like to just add that when the Finance Committee hashes through these articles, we don't just look at the price, but there's also the cost of not doing this. And there are certain situations where things are not repaired or not upkept that cost you more further down the line. There's also a litigious aspect to these if we don't properly upkeep our roads and our sidewalks and some of the areas that are public. So it isn't just that we're considering, should we spend $8,000? It's the cost of not spending $8,000 that we also discuss quite a bit, and there is a litigious angle to this.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may add, this is going to essentially be my budget message to everybody this year. Sometimes the fiscally responsible thing to do is to spend money.
Thank you.
Okay.
Look at more. Any motion on this?
Okay, motion, yeah. Here we are. Article 19, capital improvement. I move to recommend and insert.
Is there a second? Okay, Jerry seconds. All in favor? Okay, 3-4, 2 opposed or abstaining? 2 opposed. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. And we could also, if you would like, we could ask if the DPW has more than one, they could come in and explain it too, but whatever. Okay. Capital, Article 20, capital improvement.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I believe we should have Chief Polly address this before you even go any further.
I haven't even read it. What is, okay. Forestry truck, okay. This is for the forestry truck for the audience.
The original intent here is we have a 2007 Chevrolet Silverado forestry truck that I'm told when it was purchased, the truck was purchased, the chassis, the truck's in very good shape, but the department ended up because of budgetary constraints, had to put in a very, very well-intentioned but not so well-engineered tank, pump, water system for the forestry, and it has not worked well for years. My intention was to try to replace this just through the regular capital budget in terms of raise and appropriate and not do an override. So in discussions with the town administrator, my suggestion was to withdraw the article this year. It needs to be replaced, but this is a heavy, heavy warrant from my perspective, and we're trying to be mindful of all the expenses. Having said that, in reviewing and to the town administrator, Dan, I just caught this on the capital budget. We had requested to replace portable radios on page 34 of the budget. And we've been coming up with, we're looking at somewhere probably between $350,000 and $380,000 to replace all the portable radios and the mobile radios when the state police and everyone else goes from an analog to a digital system. So what we've been doing is putting so much money aside every year to have a fund to make this replacement all done at once. Because the last thing you want to do is start piecemealing radio replacement. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. We normally put in X number of dollars through the raise and appropriate, and I think it just somehow it missed it. So I would ask that maybe we take no action on this warrant article, then maybe you and I can get together and discuss, because the original submission from the fire department was to have those portable radios, again, put in there, and it somehow...
Those are still in here. They're in Article 3 of the budget, not asking to borrow to do that.
Okay, I apologize, because I see borrow one,
Yep.
appendix B.
Yep, I saw that typo myself too.
Oh, okay, so
yeah.
we're good?
Yes.
Then how about if we just withdraw the forestry replacement like I suggested?
Okay,
For this year. Thank you, Dan.
thank you.
Madam Chair?
Okay, yes, Justina.
Could we trade the town floor for the forestry truck?
Yeah. Madam
Well,
Chair?
wait, so before we go on, before the meeting, I did ask Mr. Hort if we have the money, right? We've got the finance committee here who knows if we have the money, what the money can be, how it can be spent. Oh, you don't know if we have the money yet?
A lot of this is,
Town accountant knows.
much of
Okay.
this is borrowing.
Well, you have a general idea, right? Yes,
We have a
please
little
tell
bit
me you
of
have a general idea.
confidence. We have confidence in the town's ability to
Yes.
raise and appropriate cash.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, that's important in our recommendations. That's important to trust our town administrator and the finance committee when they make a recommendation. That's kind of why we're here, because they hopefully know more than we do about that. So, but anyhow, is this about what's this about, Helen?
It's about the forestry truck.
Well, he's withdrawing it.
I know, but I have to say something, which is when I drilled down and found out what the forestry truck does, and that this particular piece of equipment that we have is not functioning well, this is not something I would pinch pennies on. I would do it maybe for another department's vehicle. I would do it for, as Justina suggested, the floor at Town Hall. But this is not, as far as I'm concerned, a place to pinch pennies. I think it should stay on the warrant, and it should be fully described, everything that it does. This is not working, this piece of equipment.
We've been able to, respectfully, we've been able to limp through it, and it has become very frustrating. I have got a couple of our latest hires are pretty talented, and I hate to use the term Band-Aid, but limping through with stuff. And from my perspective, it's about priorities. And my priority as the fire chief this year is the 2 additional positions and replacing the aerial ladder. Those are 2 needs that we just have to have done. And Helen, I do appreciate your support. I appreciate it so very, very much. But from my perspective, again, I'm trying to work with the town and see, you know what, we can wait a year. I think we can wait a year.
So there's
Go ahead.
yeah, there's an emergency, and you need that piece of equipment to function, right? I'm thinking about our whole budget, all the different vehicles, all the different things we're spending money on. You have to think about your department like that. I don't. We don't. And this is one piece of equipment. I think you should fix the equipment on it and have it ready to use without Band-Aids in some kind of difficult turn-on-a-dime situation. And in terms of regionality, any truck that works well for us is available for mutual aid to other towns. It's really different than the linoleum floor downstairs at Town Hall.
Madam Chair.
Kathleen had her hand up first.
Madam Chair, through you to Helen, the Cape Cod National Seashore has one of these trucks if we were in a pinch. And to you, Chief Polly, when you're ready to sell that thing, it's my kind of truck, so.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, through you, one of the things the Finance Committee puts a great deal of stock in is the department manager's fiscal responsibility. And although we voted to support this article that is now being recommended to withdraw, we generally feel that when a department manager is being fiscally responsible enough to withdraw an article because they feel they can survive another year, we tend to put a lot of credence to that.
Thank you. I would agree with that. That's why we have department heads. Well, he's withdrawing
no
it, right?
action.
We don't, yeah, no action.
I did my best. It's okay.
Okay. Article 21, fuel storage tank for the marina. What's CIP?
Community
Oh, yeah, capital improvement
We're seeing Pomona.
purchase, yeah.
We're seeing Pomona.
I just want to apologize, I got the preliminary construction cost estimates, but I haven't been able, I thought it was just the Board of Selectmen, so I.
That's okay, we can share.
Copies, so spread them out, can you?
Oh, yeah, I'm the chair, I don't have to share, I have to share with Jerry.
Holy cow.
Come here. So
Yeah, but I.
Mike, I'm gonna start with messing you up totally. We're really trying to have a vision of the marina. We've talked about this being a wonderful place, visually. And I still want the tanks put underground or under the pier, wherever they are now. That being said, I'll let Helen have that.
So I appreciate all this, and we got a sense of underground versus above ground in our visit with you. And I want the safest thing. And given sea level rise, and given what I heard at the Finance Committee, which discussed the double wall, super duper maximum protection thing, and also given the detailed descriptions by an engineer that we got when Cumberland Farms was talking with us about the underground tanks, I know a surprising amount about underground tanks. And I don't want them anymore, and of course they look better, you're right, but at this point, the marina, the marina's the marina. It's not a mall, it's the marina. It has a lot of evidence of work and things going on. And my only question is, if we only have the property that we now own, I'm saying this carefully, where would you put it above ground?
First of all, we'd have to,
You know, Mike, I think you have to turn on the mic. Nobody's turned that on yet, but you, who's back
Is
there?
it green
Andrew
mic?
back there? Mia's back there.
Maybe,
I think you just need to pick the mic up and hold it closer to your mouth.
Is it on? Okay. Yeah,
or bend over?
or, yeah, there we go.
And
yes, yeah, this is,
Yeah.
but I think I can speak loud enough, everybody can hear me.
it's for the video
TV.
recording.
Yeah.
All right.
Just, yeah, use that one.
There we go. Thank you, Mia.
My recommendation for above ground was predominantly because of the environmental impact. This past winter, the winter before this one, we had a washover which overflowed right over our underground tanks. And to me, that didn't seem like a very environmental safe thing to be doing. The new tanks, we hope to place behind the store. But seeing we don't really have that property yet, there are other sites available where it would be more hidden than it would be if we were to put it right out in the middle of the parking area. But for now, in the meantime, I would think if we get the old tanks removed, put the above-ground tanks where the underground tanks were, we could always move them at a later date to open up that sight
View,
line
okay.
of the marina.
Okay. Yes.
I have a question through you, Madam Chair. The anchoring and straps line item. The quantity is 1, the unit cost is $18,000, and the note is at least 3 needed. I am assuming that the quantity 1 is actually for all 3, or am I?
Yes, I believe it's for all 3.
Okay.
Kathleen?
Yes, Madam Chair, through you to our harbor master, Mr. Flanagan. If we site the above-ground tanks, you know, at the pier facility, is it conceivable you could site them to the side of the men's room where you're now holding, you know, equipment and flotsam and jetsam or whatever you want to call it? I mean, they'd have to run the lines there, but, you know, it doesn't impact the view shed as greatly as siting them where they are now. And I'd also like to let you know that the Chamber of Commerce is willing to lend you their billboard
I was going to say,
for
I was going to say that.
purpose
That answers the problem.
of
Yeah.
creating an artistic event on those above-ground tanks.
Well, originally, when we got the grant for the transient dock over next to the Harbor Master Building, it was for a transient dock and fuel
Yeah.
dock. However, the fuel dock never really materialized, but I suppose we could resurrect it and possibly see if we could site the tanks in that area.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because if you look at the physicality of refueling, that's a good site.
It is,
I guess
yes.
that's why, you know, there was a fuel dock there to begin with. It's a very good site, safety-wise, close to the harbor master's shack, certainly than where the fuel tanks are now. And, you know, it's kind of not in the view shed per se, so that would be my first choice.
Yeah, we can look into that. I just wanted to get you the cost of it. I knew the tanks were going to be about $250,000, but then all the associated
Other stuff.
costs, they seem to add up quite a bit. especially the removal and excavation of the old underground.
Well, the good news is we won't have to do it for another 30 years, hopefully.
So do we want to,
I have one more
okay,
question.
yes, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Janet. Yep, that's fine.
Does this not include the tank themselves, the tank itself?
No, this includes the tanks.
The article doesn't include all the costs.
No, I understand, but
Okay.
well, you said you thought that the tanks were going to be $250,000. You,
Yes, and
when
that's
you say
pretty
that,
much-
you mean,
And all the, everything to put them in the piping and all, it comes to a total of 232,100
oh, I see, so that's,
for the tanks and all the equipment and the piping.
The construction
The
contingency.
big cost of this would be
Right.
the elevated base. It has to be on a concrete base that will be above the floodplain. That was a significant price, the 95,000.
Janet, there's a $95,000.
right, I see
Let's
it.
say they can, oh, that's Janet, okay. I didn't know yet.
Hi, Janet.
So, we have to rewrite the article because of the cost difference.
We'd have to rewrite it, we'd have to change the amount in it.
Yes. So because of that, do we want to just postpone this? And now that the harbor master has all the information available, even if you wanted to change sites of it, should we postpone this and wait, or?
Mike, do you think anything's going to change from what your proposal is now, your dollar amount?
No, I don't think.
Okay, oh, okay.
He just sent this to me today.
Okay.
He's been working on it for a week or so.
Okay.
yeah.
So yes, Kathleen?
Through you, Madam Chair, Mr. Hort, is it my understanding that the $95,000 for the 20% contingency may not have to be spent if there is not an issue with the construction?
That is correct, yeah.
That makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This, this has to be done, so.
And,
Question?
yes, through you, is this work anticipated to be done by our DPW, or will we be bringing in a contractor?
No, we would have to bring in another contractor.
And has this estimate been prepared by a contractor or by the DPW?
By an engineer who was familiar with
Citing
pricing
above
and
ground
the contractors.
tanks, okay, thank you.
2 questions.
Okay.
So I'm a little confused. Is it one tank or tanks plural?
Tanks.
It's one tank, but it's split.
Two
So that we have
compartments.
Right.
diesel and gasoline in the same tank.
Okay, so it's actually tanks
Yes,
in one container. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and this is kind of an important typo, in the summary, it says, the insurance company has informed us that they do not normally insure tanks that are over 30 years old, if I remember correctly, information we've already gotten, and it says install tanks. And so can we change it to tanks plural? Because it's 2 separate kinds of gas. Yeah, so that's a little thing, but thank you.
Okay, so do we want to vote to insert this article
And recommend.
and recommend with the amended amounts?
May I move it?
Yes, you may.
I move that we insert and recommend Article 21, CIP, fuel storage tanks for Marina.
Do you guys want to read?
Second?
No, you don't have a full meeting.
Right.
Can you
All in favor?
Can you put the amount in your motion, just because it's different than what you would be looking at here?
Okay, give it, I think I know which one it is, but which one do you want me to take off this piece of paper?
The last one.
The last one.
That big
Yeah.
number at the bottom.
Round
Yeah.
up, 650.
Yeah.
I would call it 6086.
Yep. I'm going to do that over again. I move that we insert and recommend Article 21, CIP, fuel storage tanks for the Marina. And to see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $608,584, $608,584, or any other sum. Blah, blah,
Second?
blah.
All in favor? Okay, great, thank you. Article, never mind. Article 22, other post-employment benefits appropriation, to see if the town will vote to raise, appropriate, or transfer $200,000 to be added to our post-employment benefits. I believe this is our annual deposit,
Yeah.
right?
That is correct.
The Finance Committee does recommend this, 8-0. Any questions or comments, or may I have a motion?
Whoops, you make it. I'm on the wrong page.
I move Article 22 to be recommended and inserted in the warrant.
Second?
All in favor? Thank you. And then Article 23 is about other post-employment
same.
benefits appropriation for the school. And again, the Finance Committee recommends 8-0. Any comments, questions, or may I have a motion?
I move Article 23 to be inserted and recommended.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Thank you. Marina Enterprise Stabilization Fund, Article 24, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate from the Marina Parking Fund the sum of $10,000 for the purpose of contributing to the Marina Enterprise Stabilization Fund. Any Finance Committee recommends 8-0. Any question, comments, or may I have a motion?
I have a question, Madam Chair, through you to, I don't know who. We're taking $10,000 from the parking fund, the parking money that the marina made, and then putting it into the enterprise fund.
Or is it
So we're not-
yes, yeah,
Stabilization fund.
So we're not borrowing this amount?
Right,
That is correct.
We're just,
Line item moves.
saving it, that's our little way of saving.
okay, so I
savings
guess I'm
bank.
okay with that.
May I have a motion?
I move Article 24 to be recommended and inserted in the warrant.
Second. All in favor? Thank you. Article 25, to transfer to the stabilization fund. No, it's just to the stabilization fund. $40,000. Again, Finance Committee recommends 8-0. Any questions, comments, or may I have a motion to recommend in place or insert?
Yeah.
I
This
move
again
we,
is a pretty standard, adding to the stabilization fund, wise finances. think it
I
happens
move
every
we
year.
approve and insert Article 25 into the warrant.
Second?
All in favor? Thank you. Transfer to the Lower Cape Cable Advisory TV Fund from cable receipts, $114,000 to fund local television access programming. Again, the Finance Committee has not voted on this yet, I'm going to guess, and nor has the Cable Advisory Committee. Have you? Okay,
This is the cable TV,
yeah,
27, Article 27?
26.
Oh, I'm sorry, 26. Yeah, so we did in fact vote to recommend.
8-0 or,
6-0.
6-0.
That was a different meeting.
okay,
Slow night.
good. Any comments or questions from the Select Board? Or can I have a motion?
I move Article 26 to be recommended and inserted in the warrant.
Second?
All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. So Article 27, from the Community Preservation, to see if the town will vote to hear and act on the report of the Community Preservation Committee for fiscal year 2020, to appropriate from their funds $26,837.27, 25 cents. And that is for their expenses, administrative and other necessary expenses. Yes. I have a-
Madam Chair, I'd like to suggest that at this time, we take Article 27 through Article 32 and vote to recommend and insert in the warrant, just for the convenience of time. These are always very well vetted, so.
I agree. Any comment from the Finance Committee or the Select Board?
Janet, I
Yeah,
would,
Steve. Oh,
go ahead.
either way.
I'm sorry, the Finance Committee voted to recommend all of these articles, and we did have a presentation from the Community Preservation Committee, and we agree that this has been well vetted.
Great. You were going to say the same thing, Mr. Pelagic?
Pretty much, they did a very good job.
Yes, good. Okay, so there's a motion on the table of recommending Article 27 through 32
Two.
to recommend and place on the warrant. May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Brings us to Article 33, Universal Preschool.
Okay, where am I? 31, 32, 33.
Are you doing that?
16, there we go. Okay, so Article
I know. I did it.
16, 17.
Page 18?
Hmm?
Page 18?
There we go. Okay, so the next article is raising and appropriating funds for the universal preschool of $100,000 or any other sum for the purpose of funding a voucher system. And this is for the preschool for 3-year-old children of Wellfleet residents. Any questions or comments from the board? And the Finance Committee has not recommended this yet, or have you have one tonight? Okay,
I'm going to defer questions on this to Stephen.
okay. So any questions, comments from our board?
I have two favorite articles on this warrant. One is the fuel tanks, and the other one is this. Our Community Services Administrator, Suzanne Grout-Thomas, gave us a very succinct and absolutely useful description of why this is a good idea. And I think we really need to support families with younger children, big time. It's a lot of money, and we should always think it's going to be money every year, and I think it's worth it.
I don't think you're going to have any argument. What would you guys like to say?
We were just waiting for a breakdown of what the fund balance is, if there is one, is it revolving, and projection for the year, but
I expect we'll be acting on this at Wednesday's meeting.
Yeah. Do you have any answers to those questions?
You
Dan?
know, there was an email earlier this evening from Suzanne to Stephen. He probably hasn't seen it
sharing
yet.
is caring.
you. She emailed you.
No, she emailed me that.
Let me just read, if I can, what the email was from Suzanne. The current balance as of 12/31/2018 is $41,179.60. The balance is already allocated for spending. I recently sent out a letter to all parents notifying them of their balance available this year. Because there were 19 children funded this year, the per-child grant was $5,263. Most of them will use up their grant before the year ends. The $100,000 was originally suggested by Paul Pilcher based on his recommendation to fund at $7,000 per child, which was the cost then of full-time at the Montessori school. One of the issues is that even if I get the numbers from the school of incoming 4-year-olds and from the town clerk via the street census, it's never accurate. Most years I know 13 or 14, and I know of 13 or 14, and we end up with 17 or 18. I have attached the history of the years the voucher program has been in effect. And she is always happy to answer questions.
Yes, she's very good.
Kathleen?
Madam Chair, I'd like to also, agree with Helen that supporting this article is an investment in sustainable community for the future. So I'm hoping that the residents at town meeting will also support this. But I would like to move this and recommend it.
Jerry?
Yeah. I'm for this article also, but the Sea Baby article that Paul Pilcher worked on was for those children 3 years and younger. So this article really doesn't have anything to do. This is for 3-year-olds that he ultimately will be going to the 4-year-olds. This is a different article than the one that Paul, and I actually worked on some of it with him, is for nothing to do with sea babies. Sea babies is for children that are 3 and under. This article is for children that are 3 and older.
It does say 3-year-olds.
It does say 3-year-olds.
So last year, we funded it for 4-year-olds, preschoolers, and then there were,
Preschoolers.
we had $100,000, and then it was split evenly between however many children there were. It was then proposed to add an extra $100,000 for 3-year-olds.
3-year-olds, yes.
Right, so this is,
All right,
This is
yeah,
yeah.
for town meeting.
Okay, I think this article should be put on the warrant. I think it's a great article. And it's a finance committee. Did you recommend this?
We were waiting on that additional information. We'll discuss this at our meeting
Yeah.
on Wednesday.
Okay,
And we
thank you.
could get more information, but, 19 children in the preschools, that's, and I do know people who want to move to Wellfleet just because of this, and so that will pay off, and probably have moved to Wellfleet because of this. So may I have a motion?
Madam Chair?
Yes?
Yes, something about the summary. I'm working on good summaries. So if I understand correctly, if we fill this missing gap for 3-year-olds, the missing gap between the sea babies and the 4-year-olds, we will have sort of seamless childcare here. And could some version of that thought be put into the summary? Because it's in my mind process, that's been a very important factor.
If you would like to send me a recommendation wording, I'd be happy to insert it for you. All I did was copy the article from when it was approved for $100,000 for 4-year-olds. I
Okay.
just copied it and changed it to 3-year-olds.
Oh, can't you do that sentence?
Yes,
Anyway,
ma'am.
it should
Yes,
be in there,
ma'am.
don't you think? It's a whole different ballgame.
Well, I think the whole, maybe, yeah,
Seamless.
whatever. I'm sure Courtney will work on that.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
We did make a motion, right?
Kathleen made a motion, I don't have a second. yet.
Second.
Okay, there we go. All in favor? Thank you. Shellfish Revolving Fund, to see if the town will vote to fix the maximum amount that may be spent during fiscal year 2020, beginning on July 1st, 2019, for the revolving fund established by the town for certain departments, boards, committees, agencies, or officers. So we're spending $25,000. Finance Committee has not made their recommendation yet.
That's not correct. It was made
Okay.
after you got
Okay.
this.
Do
The
you-
the remaining articles we've pretty much been through, so
So we'll start with asking you what your recommendation is.
we voted to recommend 5-0 with 1 abstention.
Okay, 501. And we'll hear from the Shellfish Advisory Board, what they recommend. What's
They
your
recommended it at their September 17th meeting, this is how it all,
Then
kind
do
of
you
all
have a-
started at the Shellfish Advisory
And
Board.
was it unanimous, or,
I think it was, but I can find out, or
Okay.
they
Well-
can vote on it again in March.
yeah, for the town meeting to have it there? Any questions, comments from our board?
I
From your
have a
board?
question for Dan about the stuff that I prepared over the weekend to actually establish and create the revolving fund.
You can say it to everybody
Okay,
here. The concept here behind, as Nancy is passing out items for the Shellfish Revolving Fund, is that eventually what we'll do is we'll take any new receipts that come in and we'll put them into the revolving fund, and those will be dedicated to propagation. And so it'll be a direct way of saying to the shellfish industry that, you know, if we increase your fees, we're reinvesting them right back into you. So that's what, in a very general sense, that's really what we're trying to do here. So eventually, when we accomplish this, then you won't have a budget in the operating budget for propagation. It'll be paid for out of the shellfish revolving fund.
It should be this way.
This is not a borrowing article.
Right.
No.
And I will say for the audience, as I quickly scan this, that Ms. Chavette is proposing to take 75% of the shellfish fund revenues and dedicate them, so there will be money available for other things, right?
Yes, so if I could just step back and start at the beginning. The article number 34, as it's written in the warrant, is, I believe it is something that the select board does every year, and this is why I just need to sit with Dan on it. But I believe that the article to the town meeting needs to actually create the fund. So the second page that I gave you is the way that I have written, and it's probably too long, but it's my best try at writing a town meeting article that will create this shellfish revolving fund. The important thing is that you specify exactly where the money's going to come from, which is receipts for permit sales, license fees, and other things that might happen down the line. And then how the money can be spent, which is on propagation. So as we put in here, let's see, for the propagation, cultivation, protection, and study of shellfish. And then if we specify when we create the fund, it can also fund all or part of municipal salaries as long as fringe benefits are also included. And this would be for propagation employees. So this isn't something that's going to happen in the beginning, but I know 2 other towns that pay salaries out of this. So again, then that takes something out of my budget line item 179 down the road. It's not going to, it's not going to do this, but because it's a revolving fund and it accumulates over time, it is something that we could think of in the future. So I'm just trying to kind of take that long view.
So I'm going to suggest that we postpone this article so that we and the Finance Committee have time to look at it, since this isn't the same article we have here. Kathleen, did you have something to add to that?
Yes, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Hort. This makes sense to me. I think it's a very logical way to, fund the budget of the Shellfish Department. However, my question to you, Mr. Hort, is who oversees the fund, who maintains it? Our town accountant, the Shellfish Department, yourself, sir?
It's maintained by the town accountant.
Okay.
The oversight would be from the Shellfish Department and the town administrator's
Okay.
office.
I tried to include that, and I know it's hard because I just gave
In the
this to you
summary.
now.
Yeah.
But I tried to include that in the top part of the, so it says, "The principal of this fund shall be spent under the direction of the Shellfish Constable with the advice of the Shellfish Advisory Board, subject to final approval of the Select Board for the propagation, cultivation, protection, and study of shellfish."
Okay, thank you. So you'll come back with the corrected article, and we'll vote on it.
After you've had a chance to read through
Yeah.
it, and then we'll change it in the warrant, and then on the 12th, you can vote to insert and recommend.
Okay.
If that's
So
your-
I could come,
your choice.
yeah, I guess this gives you a minute to look at it, and then I'll be there
Gives
on
us
the
a
12th
week.
to discuss. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
And then Finance Committee, if you want me to come in and talk about this. Steve, I tried to, in some of the comparison documents, Steve wanted to know comparisons between how many employees for each town. I put in propagation budgets for other towns, and I really concentrated on the top shellfishing producing towns on Cape Cod. So that's all in here, and I'm sorry it didn't get to you in advance to look at, but
We have
I'm
time. That's why
happy to
we
come
do
back.
this early.
Yeah.
That's why we're getting it going. Good, thank you. Is this pertinent to postponing it?
It's a question relating to it. So what is the difference between, it all sounds good, Shellfish Committee's talked about it for years, okay? What is the difference between a revolving fund and an enterprise fund?
So an enterprise fund is set up basically like a business. That's the concept. It's self-supporting. But every year, the budget needs to be approved by town meeting. A revolving fund, you set limits. Town meeting will approve the creation of a revolving fund, but the Board of Selectmen will set what the spending limits are for that fund. So the Board of Selectmen may say, where you can spend $40,000 each year out of that fund for propagation. What happens then is officially those funds can be spent without any further appropriation by town meeting. That's what a revolving fund does.
Okay, so that was important to know.
And then each year, a cap is put on the revolving fund by the Board of Selectmen. And so this year, I was asking for 50,000 because my budget right now for propagation is 46. This was before Dan and I spoke, so Dan had put it in at 25. I don't know that we're going to collect that much in receipts in our first year because it's only 75% of income and we take in about 70,000. But at least, it'd just take less would be coming from taxpayer dollars and more would be coming from the users of the resource right from the
Good
get-go.
idea. Thank you. So we're just postponing it,
Take no
right?
action at this time. yeah.
No action. Okay, thank you.
I'll email this packet to everybody.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Nancy. So Article 35, Water Resource Director. This is to see if we can raise and appropriate available funds of $95,000 for compensation and $50,000 for benefits to fund a new position to implement the town's wastewater management plan and oversee the management of the town's water system within the enterprise fund. Quick description of it. Any comments,
Madam Chair.
questions? Okay.
The Finance Committee is withholding our recommendation to town meeting. We're looking for a little bit more information. I plan to meet with our health agent tomorrow and discuss with her whether she has that information and how best to get that to the committee. But we're not going to recommend this. We're probably not going to even take action on it at Wednesday's meeting, but we will get to it before town meeting.
It might be a good idea to have the Board of Health weigh in on this. Is that right?
That's who I'm
Yeah,
meeting
I
with
mean,
tomorrow.
even-
Well,
yeah,
I'm
for
working
you
with the
guys,
health
but
agent.
I mean, even for the health agent for town meeting too, to have a recommendation or a say. What do you guys think?
I hope to have a better handle on that after my meeting tomorrow, of just
Yeah.
who else to speak to, and I can
Pass it on and tell her
pass
to
on the
pass it on to
information
us?
as we get through it, or as I get through it.
Okay,
Madam Chair,
Steve, yep.
also, what would be helpful if we could get some sort of estimate on the revenue for this new Airbnb tax, ballpark figure of potential, because that is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for a revenue source to fund some pieces of this dream that's being presented.
yeah, no, I agree. That's, that would be, to me, the primary funding for this position. When, Mr. Hort, when and if we got the short-term rental tax, so fiscal year 2020 starts July 1st. Is that but the state, when do they're on the same fiscal year, but when would the funds be available? Would they be available in January or
So the state
Fiscal year,
sends
yeah.
revenue collected quarterly. So
Okay.
I think we get the first check at like towards the end of September, and it would be for July and August.
But not of
And-
this year. Would it be,
Not in FY19, but in FY20, we'll start to get revenues in
Okay.
from that.
So this coming September.
okay. Kathleen had her hand up first.
Madam Chair, I would just like to state that I'm in support of this article. It's imperative that we get ahead of the curve with regard to this 208 plan that's coming down. And also, too, the revenue will be there in the future for this position. But I would like to get it inserted and recommended in this town meeting warrant so that we can, start to search for the person that's going to assume this position. This stuff is really, really complicated. We're going to need an individual to get us through it.
Yeah, I think we need a professional.
Yeah.
We got to step it up, and we thank our volunteers, but I'll wait to see what you're going to say. Helen, do you need to go before Alex does?
I would prefer
Okay.
to. I'm hoping that form follows function here. I'm very up to speed about this. I spoke with Hillary Greenberg about it. I spoke with Andrew Gottlieb about it. He's one of the people that was at the meeting at the beginning of February that included 2 members from the wastewater committee. I'm referring to it in a short way. We do not yet have anything that's submittable to the DEP in terms of a final proposal to them for the 208 plan.
Right.
And again, form should follow function. How the 208 plan gets implemented after the wastewater committee is done with their work is still an open question. Should we have consultants? Should we have a permanent position or even a part-time position? Should we have what the health agent, conservation agent, and I worked out, an entity that's made up of 3 experts, one of them from the Board of Health, the same way that we have the Board of Health functions, we function, all of us are in charge of very great responsibilities. We're special municipal employees. And we have staff support. And Hillary Greenberg really knows what she's doing with this. Last year, my mind was open to the idea of this position. And I went to all the different boards and committees that had to weigh in on it. And Alex Hay was there too, and Kurt Felix was there. And I listened to what they said. And by the way, their recommendations are not on this warrant list yet. It includes the CONSCOM, the Natural Resources Advisory Board, the Board of Health, most importantly, the Shellfish Advisory Board, because there are issues in the 208 plan that have to do with shellfish, the Mayo Creek Restoration Committee. They all met on this proposal. And some of them were very against it, and they had good reasons. So I'm not sure a position will cover this very important body of work. But the thing that I can deliver to you from 2 separate kind of brainstorming meetings that included the DEP, Hillary, and some other people, maybe Alex was at some of them, and maybe Alex was going to say this, is that conflating these 2 separate responsibilities into one position is not a good idea. Do the water commissioners need help? Yes. I suggest that they increase their own training, hire experts to come in and help with that, as do many other boards and committees to very good effect. Right? It's bringing everybody who are the deciders. This position will never be a decider. This position will offer opinions and expertise and maybe engineer some of the cyclical 5-year monitoring cycles that are required in the 208 plan, but cannot do what the Board of Health, the CONSCOM, and the other regulatory boards can do. it basically is an advising position who will come in and have to tell boards and committees what his or her opinion is about it, right? They may have some administrative stuff they do. But in the case of having the two positions conflated, these people who know way more about this than I do even at this point, although I've had my nose in it now for months, said you don't get somebody for both positions. If help is needed, it can be gotten, but it shouldn't be one person, and above all, it shouldn't be one person in a full-time position added to staff who really doesn't have that much to do. The Personnel Board was extraordinary about it. Did I list that? No, I didn't. Personnel Board has to vote in, weigh in on this too.
Thank you. I forgot that.
Mr.
Madam
Hay.
Chair, well, obviously, excuse me, everyone's well aware of this article, and obviously Helen is very well versed in the history of this article, and I'm not going to go and debate the merits of this back and forth one way or the other right now. However, I do know that I think we made the mistake last time, and Helen started to get into it again about the kind of the philosophy of the point of this position, and I don't think we need to look at this in such a philosophical kind of way. What we're really looking at it is basically how the FinCom looked at it in their 5-year strategic plan, where they list it as it's an operator position, and that's the way we're looking at it. And there was some debate about whether or not it was good timing to put this now or wait until we actually had permit in hand. We strongly disagree with that. The Cape Cod Commission also has advised us that it would probably be better off having, as far as the wastewater position is concerned, get this ball rolling, because we don't think this is going to happen overnight. This could be a year before, if we approve this at town meeting, it could be a year or even longer before that position is even filled. Hopefully sooner. We're going to have to go back to town meeting. As far as the budget numbers and stuff on the rooms tax in the Cape Water Fund, that's a big question, and something that's come up recently in kind of the murkiness of all this is having someone in the position who is actually going after these funds aggressively, because those funds may dry up quicker than we would like if we are not ready to grab them. So the sooner we are ready to fund what type of technologies we are proposing, we are better suited. So really, that's what we're suited. That's what we're positioning this article for, is really to be well suited moving forward, so we're not behind the ball. Because if we do finish this article, if we do get the permit in 6 to 9 months, which realistically looks like that, where we'll be, and we go back next year to do this, we're gonna be behind the ball. There's no question. We're gonna already be paying a consultant, basically a la carte right now, going piecemeal until we as we work with the commission and some other with some other help, but commission and the DEP. But we're going to be already picking. We would like to have that. We would like to have this position now. We may be actually much closer to receiving this watershed permit, which is actually the watershed permit for Pleasant Bay. We possibly could be in a much better position right now if we had that paid position in town. Again, I've said it before, our committee does not even have a secretary. We have very little help. Our health and conservation agent does an amazing job, but she is understaffed. When her assistant went down, she was out of the picture. So it's that kind of stuff that sets us back, and obviously we want to put this to rest, and we want to move forward, and we want to start looking at this adaptive management and looking at how this is going to work. So really, I don't want to get into the philosophical argument of what this position is or who can do what and how they're going to do it, but this is a wastewater operator. This is how we need to look at this. It's a water and wastewater operator looking at the town and helping us move forward.
Justina?
I support this position, as I did last year. The Water Commission would be happy to get any fraction of management support. The wastewater committee has done extraordinary work, as we all know, helping Wellfleet avoid having to build a sewer. And I heard about penny wise, pound foolish earlier from the finance committee. This is not a given. We don't have to build a sewer. And I think we should celebrate the brain trust of the wastewater committee that got us out of it, and be responsible and staff it so we can continue to be in that position of not building a sewer, and not make the mistakes we did with the water system, with building it with 70% grant money and then starving it of management resources, which caused problems. If the position didn't get any water commission, okay, we'll eliminate it. But we got to do this. We just have to do it.
Just, Madam Chair, real quick, I just want to point out, not building a sewer is not a definite here by a long shot. Having a small sewer somewhere in town may be the best possibility, penny wise, pound foolish, moving forward. But having someone who is a talented professional working with, the commission and the DEP to do, moving forward, so our final plan is structured that way, because, the Pleasant Bay watershed permit is, goes out, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, and it's adaptive management over 5-period increments, as Helen said, and those, designing those phases to not only deal with the natural environment but also the fiscal environment is part of that process, and that takes a very special, individual to fit in that thing, to work with the different committees, to pull from the other brain trusts of all of our talented volunteer committees, and then just coordinate those people, and then, this is the person that's actually the operator.
So I would agree that this is a really important position. Water is our life here, really. I think town meeting's going to want more details. I also agree that it doesn't seem like it's a full-time position, certainly not at this point. And I also think that we have to be ready to go when the person or the 208 plan comes in. So I'm not the best person to ask about this, but I am really for it. I think it's really important. And there's certainly, again, there's other water issues too that we can do. So I'm going to suggest, and I know you've been before the select board a lot, probably more than any other committee, that, working with our town administrator, working with the finance committee, working with our assistant town administrator, with everybody really, and just getting just something more specific, because I've known about this for a couple of years and I still don't have the full comprehension of it. So if I don't have it, there's a lot of people in town meeting who don't have it. Helen's got really good comprehension of it. So unless you're going to address this.
Something new.
Something new, okay, good, go for
I
it.
completely agree with you that we should have an entity that's required with a set of initials that I always forget what they stand for, in the 208 plan, who is, in quotes, the authority. Now, it could be us, actually, but that's not a good idea. You need somebody that knows about it. Got permission, worked with the health conservation agent, who is completely versed in everything required, and thank goodness has started going to your meetings, although you haven't had one since December. The Comprehensive Wastewater Committee hasn't met since December on this. We have a professional already, and she and I drafted a very good possible authority. We talked about it very carefully. She has all the expertise that you're describing we need. And I did one of the few political things I've ever because Justina very much wanted that charge to be rescinded, and I voted for that to let you know that I was listening. But it was extremely good. It could have sat there, and it could have been put in the plan as one option for this authority, which should not be just a generic person, and it should also not be a position that is an employee of the town in a collective bargaining unit with a set of skills that only has a very narrow application, even though water affects a whole lot of our regulatory boards and committees. You know, it's under their jurisdiction, how that goes. And the communication between those boards and committees when it's working well, and which goes on if it's a healthy group. Conscom goes to Shellfish Committee goes to blah, 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 you know. We don't need a person shepherding that that's a paid employee. We just need to do it. And the chairs and the members of those boards and committees and our existing department heads should be in charge of that kind of communication, and very often are. So comprehensive plan, comprehensive wastewater committee has done a good job. I've read your two, interim plans. But in this case, we could have had this entity ready to go and getting up to speed. And I said publicly after Hillary and I drafted the charge for that, that could have been in place. Those people, those three people could have been going to your meetings already. And that was not, not thought of. It was
Chair-
rejected.
Madam Chair, real quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're getting off topic here.
Yeah.
But you're really confusing the issue here. We're talking about, the question is here whether we hire an employee or we hire consultants. That's really the only debate we're having here. Because you're going to have a WMA, which is essentially the town right now. Either we're going to use consultants to do the work, or we're going to have a paid position. We are recommending to have a paid position. Period, done. Let's look at the numbers, evaluate it, see how it works. Great. But this is what the opinion of this committee is. Several consultants already, some of the Cape Cod Commission staff, some of the DEP staff. So that's what we're talking about here. We're either going consultant or paid position. So we are, business-minded people too. We'd love to, hash out the numbers too and see how it works. But that's the question, the only question we're looking at right now.
Right. So I agree with you, I agree with Helen, and in your argument just now, you said it should have been done already, they should have gotten together already. And so I'm looking towards the future where right now, right here at 8 o'clock tonight, there's no water problem, right? It's all fine. But it's coming, it's getting bigger, we're going to need someone. So I agree. Paid personnel, consultant, somebody who can oversee more, but something has to be done. So what I'm saying, I'm going to let Kathleen speak, and then I know that, this has been a year-long debate, maybe a year and a half long. And it's a hard one, and obviously the Finance Committee, there was actually a policy, a town policy not to hire any new people a few years ago. And I don't know, I feel like we've got to look towards the future. And being a volunteer, it's not easy, and things slip through the cracks. And I know that these two committees, the wastewater management and the water system people, it's just not easy. But Kathleen had her hand up first.
Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Hay, my hope is that you'll be able to get Scott Horsley back to town meeting. No one can explain this, the intricacies of this and the immediacies of this position the way he can. So that would be in your favor. The other thing that I want to impress upon anyone that's listening, this is one of those cans we keep kicking down the road.
Right, yeah.
And there's going to come a time when the state says, you're done with this.
So I want to ask our town administrator, just financially, it's 95, do we have the money for this? Would you recommend more of a part-time person? Would you recommend a consultant? And okay, I'll let Mr. McGee weigh in on it too. Do you have, yeah, who wants to go first? Because both of you, I'd like to hear from both of you.
I'll just quickly respond. We have a policy that if we're going to add a new position, that it be funded via an override.
Yeah.
So this
Okay.
would not be funded using existed funds. We would ask town meeting voters to vote on it, and then it would also have to be approved at the ballot box.
Okay. And how do you feel about the proposed money and salary?
I think we rely on a committee sometimes to do too much, and at some point, the committee needs to be able to turn that over. And as Mr. Hayes said, we have to decide whether we keep paying a consultant to do that or we employ a person to do it, so.
So realistically, too, if this does get approved at town meeting or the ballot box, we still don't have to spend any money until we get the person, until we get the need. So that's my other thought. Mr. McGee?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, thank you. I was just going to say, in some ways, and Alex said that the first strategic plan the FinCom did express the position the way they think of it. Well, I'll invert that to some degree in that when we were having our meetings leading up to town meeting last year, it was in part the presentation of the Wastewater Management Committee that led us to suddenly have this epiphany that the water issues of the town are sort of connected. Water in, water out.
I agree, yeah.
Are related. And that we listen, I think we had them in 2 or 3 times last year, and again this year, listening to the justification for the position. And I don't know if I'm speaking for myself now or for the FinCom in general, because there are people in the FinCom who have issues about hiring a person to do these things, or a consultant. So, I mean, we've gone back and forth on this as well. Apart from what it is, whether it needs to be done or not. And part of the challenge in making that decision, seems to me, and I did 25 years in the corporate world in organizational development and strategy, strategic planning, is that most of these, many times, these questions boil down to one of governance, which is, I think we've talked about this a lot already, which is this a position anyone's going to report to, listen to? Is it an advisory position, or is it a management position in that you are collecting all of the inputs to the question or the problem and channeling them through this governing position or not? And if the answer is not, then the position is, it almost becomes a self-defining thing. Then the position ought to be probably a very limited scope function, perhaps managing the watershed issue, or an advisory position to the boards and the people who are already doing it. But I will say this, and I go back and forth on it personally, the water problems in the town are not getting better. They're getting worse, and that's apart from sea level rise and however you think about that. And, I mean, just look at the harbor. Recently there was a low tide. You could almost walk to Great Island across the harbor because there's no channel. I mean, you can see the problems. So how those relate to each other is an open question. Coordinating the various individuals and boards that are supposed to be coordinating and taking care of this is another open question. But the fact that we are where we are and the things that should have been done have not been done yet, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, suggests that we're missing a governing opportunity somewhere. And whether you invested in this position or not, to say they have authority to set the direction for change is a question not for town meeting. I think it's for the select board. It's for you to decide how you want to structure the governance of water management and wastewater management in this town. And whether you connect the two, or you say wastewater management is one thing and water management is another, and they're unrelated to each other, they should be managed separately. These are open questions. But the seas keep rising, harbor keeps getting clogged up, Mayo Beach is now Black Mayo Beach. I mean, on and on and on and on. At some point, there, in my opinion, and I think to some degree the FinCom's position, you will need to have some sort of coherent overall strategy. Whether this position has a role in setting that strategy is an open question.
Good, thank you, well said. Mr. Powers is up. Yep.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. And building on the previous speaker, different from last year, there is a personnel board that's in place. There is an assistant town administrator that now understands his role as human resources, and a lot of the discussion that's happening tonight also belies the fact that the personnel board needs to address this. And I do that with a nod to my colleague on the board who brought that to my attention 2 weeks ago. So there is another process that needs to take place. There needs to be some evaluation of the proposal by the personnel board if there is to be a new position, because the personnel bylaws require that the personnel board engage in that. But I think the personnel board is well positioned to also weigh in on whether there should be a new position or a consultant. So we'll get working on that in the next few weeks.
So it does sound to me, and we can move on from this too, is, well, I guess I can't say by consensus, but I think it's agreed that water is is a priority in our town. The volunteer committees are wanting to, I don't know if you want to resign, but the two committees that I've spoken to agree that they need more help, more real-time help, more regular help. And I would like to suggest that we could move this article, but in the meantime, really define it better, because shellfish should be advised. Dredging, Fred's really referring to dredging when he talks about the harbor. I mean, it would be, I don't know if a water, that's a whole nother story that I didn't want to bring up, but that if you had a water management person, would they also be able to manage dredging? I don't know, but we've talked about this a lot. We're going to probably talk about it some more. And
Madam Chair, could I say
Yes.
a little bit about this? The big issue that we had last year on the personnel board was we did not have an actual job description. We have a little bit more resources this year now with this pending Airbnb tax. This, to me, there are two positions in here. One is for somebody to help the Board of Water Commissioners with the maintenance and the oversight of the current water supply system. That should be a separate position from this, because the funding for that should come from tax revenue. This whole oversight of this whole process, we have an opportunity to get resources elsewhere, so it doesn't have to be a salaried position. We don't yet have a permit in hand, as Alec had pointed out. It's going to take 6 to 9 months to get that. Now, I'm assuming that means that the plan that this town has submitted, which has been on hold, will then be approved. Then it's going to take 2 years to fill the position. It doesn't make fiscal sense to take money right now for an expense that looks like 2 years down the line and may morph into something else. The danger in approaching creating staff through the backdoor method such as this is that 2 years down the line, it morphs into something else. So I would, recommend to the Board of Selectmen to make recommendation at town meeting till we have a little bit more information, because there are many unanswered questions, and I do agree with everybody that water is a big challenging issue for the town. However, this is a large chunk of change that's going to be put somewhere and held for 2 years maybe to be used, and that does not make sense to me.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Steve, respectfully, having tried to run the water system for 8 years, there are needs there. And I don't know why, because people didn't want the water system, or they wish it wasn't there, or it's new. We're just in denial. And I spent too many times over winters driving around looking for leaks, with no town employee, no truck, no help whatsoever, and then going up in front of budget meetings and being, asked why the electric bill went up and so forth. It's a real system. I forget how many thousands of square feet of pipe are in the ground, and connections and leaks that explode and cause 2 swimming pools full of water to flood, it was such a relief to just leave the water system. And we actually really need some resources there. It's,
So-
and so therefore, the wastewater committee has been working extremely hard, hours they can't sustain. And we have an unfunded mandate from, with the 208 fund. It's not optional. These expenses aren't optional. So I'd rather straighten out the warrant article so that we can live with the language and live with the sources of the funds and take responsibility in these two areas. We really just aren't taking responsibility, and I can speak with authority from my old position as water chair, and I watched the struggles that the wastewater committee is going through, and I think the town should support these 2 volunteer boards and take responsibility.
So what I suggest from the Finance Committee and from what I've heard,
But Janet, may I also just respond, because I want Justina to know
Okay.
that I agree with her.
Yeah.
The piece that, what I mean is there are 2 positions in here. The piece that should be taken out should be then creating a position for the Board of Water Commissioners and have a set job. That's an easy job description to come up with, and it has, definite tasks at hand that need to be addressed. On the wastewater side of it, though, it's too nebulous. It keeps, there are too many unanswered questions. So I'm not saying not to do the full-time position for the Board of Water Commissioners. I'm saying we need to separate the 2 out of this.
Sure. No, I
So wait,
appreciate the point and the support. I just don't think that the Water Commission needs a full-time position. So the concept is that we could utilize a portion of management resources. And I do think that that's realistic. The water system doesn't need a full-time manager. The board's doing a really good job, but they do need some professional oversight.
would you be able, so did Steve say it right, that it would take 2 years to find somebody? Did I miss?
I'm not sure,
I jotted this down when you said, first of all, we need to have a permit in hand, which hasn't happened yet, right?
correct,
6 to 9 months on that?
we hope.
Right,
Oh.
so then this year is the first year, and then you were saying that you probably wouldn't
Okay.
be able to fill the position next year. To me, that's a 2-year timeframe.
No, I'm talking
Okay.
about, I don't know what the hiring length is, but,
Right, but my point is, you're asking us to put
which I-
aside a kitty of
which-
cash now for something
I
that's going to be
totally
spent a
agree.
year
I
later.
totally agree with that. Not what I was gonna say when I came up here, though, but, my point was this. Part of the vagueness of this job description is because the vagueness of which we have had to navigate this process. The last meeting we went to completely changed, again, the requirements of what we need to do. The DEP said that they literally said we no longer need a comprehensive management wastewater permit, right? They're allowing us, for the only second one ever issued, to get a watershed permit, which is different, which is this permit, which is only 18 pages long. That's it. So we would have known that a lot longer if we had professional staff on this with us going through this process. And Helen shakes her head at this, but I know this would have happened if we had someone dedicated to doing this. This is all our point. I'm totally on board with the FinCom. I agree. If there's another way that we can fund this position in a better way, let's talk. Let's try to figure it out. But we know we need. It's not the volunteer committees need help. This is the next phase. We're going to need operators moving forward, and this is what we're trying to do. It's not the committees. It's okay. Who's going to run this thing moving forward? This is a process. This is an adaptive management process. It changes constantly. So this isn't like a bunch of committees going together and then going out and say, okay, who's going to do the testing today, and who's going to be, oh, wait a second, we need to change this. The golf course needs to now, who's going to approach the golf course and change their fertilizer mitigation plan? So this is, again, adaptive mitigation. I'm totally on board with what the FinCom's saying. If you guys have a better way to propose this, we're on board with that too.
So wait 1 second. So what if everyone gets together, but we present a consultant at first that could, or even hire a consultant soon.
We have a consultant, we already have a consultant on hire who just, we're waiting for the new, to re-up his amendment on his contract
Okay,
right now.
so can that person oversee this for, say, 6 months?
We'll get to the finish line. We're,
So, okay, so I guess my question is then, so can we have a consultant to take the burden off of the committees? And, oh, Steve's scratching his
No, no.
eyes.
well, I'll
Okay.
tell you right now, so we just,
Okay,
so
But then,
No,
it's
no,
not-
it's
so,
not
that- so just to
For
simplify
example-
this and move it on, can we, because I totally agree with the need for this and the importance of it. So since the job description isn't totally there, and we're combining 2 positions, if not more, like we have, I always want this water czar to like just
let me,
take
for
over.
the
Can we-
sake of time tonight,
Yes,
let
thank
me,
you.
we will refine the job description and, the motion and try to get it so everyone's on the same page.
But start with the fact that you could maintain a consultant, get a new consultant, and then
We'll have to,
move into a position. But I support both. I just don't know.
we'll phrase it
yeah.
in a way that everyone can kind of understand
Yeah,
what's going on
that would
here,
be
because I
great.
think there's a lot of, I think we're talking and
And
not
I-
really connecting.
And I know Hillary Greenberg, Lemus Greenberg, is great at her job. I'm sure she wouldn't mind. It seems to me that many of the employees, the department heads, are overburdened because there is so
Right,
much.
This came
there
from
is so
asking
much.
Hillary if she could do
Yeah.
this, and she said no.
Yeah. So, okay, so make it quick. You've already spoken way too much. Make it quick.
Many people have spoken too much,
Okay.
okay? Couple of things. This position would have nothing to do with dredging. Second thing,
Not true.
second
Not-
thing,
Not
Not
in
true.
your opinion.
Not true at all.
well,
Because we're trying to get nitrogen mitigation credits from
No,
the
I
actual
understand
spoils
that.
that actually are moved from the harbor. So it
I
absolutely has something to do with dredging.
yes, I
There's
understand.
so much misinformation going on here that it's very frustrating to be
Alex,
sitting here and
I'm
being told
talking,
not.
I'm talking. Thank you. I listened to you, and I did listen to you, okay? There are not just 2 options. It's not consultants or a position. Consultants who we've already paid, your committee has used and gotten $500,000 for and used up a lot of it, and I must say, I'm impressed with some of the results, okay? Those interim plans and what you're doing now. The third option is Hillary agreed to be the staff support, working with the charge that she and I wrote with 3 good people on it, one of whom has worked for the Cape Cod Commission. This is her bread and butter. She's a scientist. The other one's a scientist. The third one's on the Board of Health, okay? And that was a third option. I have a question through you, Madam Chair,
So
for
I'm-
Alex, which is, excuse me, sorry, please. Did that charge, with that description and that commitment from town staff, ever get shown to the Cape Cod Commission and the DEP as a third option besides more consultants, a paid position, and that was the third option?
It was shown to the Cape Cod Commission, and they said this is premature and unnecessary at this time.
Okay, that's a good answer, and I didn't know that. So the other thing is, in fact, the water situation and addressing it, and the DEP knows this, and people on boards and committees like the Board of Health and so forth know it. The Board of Health has been pegging away at improving point and 9-point pollution around the harbor through using it's the CONSCOM that does the non-point and the Board of Health that does the point, using alternative systems for years, for the last 20 years, and it has made things better. So the DEP is aware, and I'm aware, and other people are aware, that in fact, we have been going in the direction that the 208 plan would like us to go for a long time. We just need to commit to it and keep following it. And it's been happening well, and it can happen better. And to answer your question, is this a managing, or you said, is this going to be a managing position, or is this going to be an advisory position? That's a very good question. It's the one I asked first. There's no way that somebody in this position could tell the Board of Health or the CONSCOM, right, or the NRAB, or the Shellfish Committee, or this Shellfish Regulatory Board what to do. They could just advise. And the advice is already out there, and then information is very often being collected by these committees and boards. Thank you for letting me speak again.
Madam Chair, if I could just say something really quick. I wasn't suggesting that this position would oversee dredging. What I was saying was, per the last presentation we had from the wastewater management team, that there, because of the nitrogen remediation issues and the need to have a clear channel and have flow of water in and out, that there were interconnected systems that were dependent or interdependent in order for them to achieve the goals that they were going to have to achieve to get the watershed recognition, including the potential to have to put in a small sewer system, if I recall. Not a massive one, but there are several charts that were presented, and one involved putting in a small. So that was the point of the governance issue, was because those responsibilities are now spread out and managed in different areas, but because there has to be a coherent strategy in order for them to achieve the nitrogen remediation that they have to get to eventually, in order to avoid having to put in a comprehensive sewer system potentially to get the nitrogen out, that there has to be a governance issue. They have to have more than a hand-raising role. They have to be able to drive some of the decisions. Whether they make the decisions or not is another question. That's how the town manages coordination. That's not up to us, obviously. That's all I was trying to say.
Good. Kathleen?
So just a last, see if I can put a bow around this. I don't think that anybody disagrees that there are water issues that need to be addressed. I think what we're talking about here and what we've spent a lot of time on is how those are going to be best addressed. I don't think it's in the Finances Committee's purview to necessarily say how they are going to be best addressed, but we can weigh in on the fact that the thing that we haven't spoken about is the cost of the person that comes on board and that cost ad infinitum. Helen mentioned if we don't like the position, we can get rid of it. I defy anybody to find a position that has been taken away from government. So I think there's a careful consideration, and that's what the issue is. I think the description is vague. The responsibilities we've just talked here, you admitted, Mac, about, Alex, about misinformation going around. I think you need to have a clear view, and it needs to be presented so people need to know exactly what they're voting on. Nobody is saying we want some dirty water, let's have some more of it, but we're just trying to get to the way to best handle it for the fiscal responsibility of the town, which is our charge up here. Alex, sorry.
So if you're willing, if any of your committee, administration, Shellfish Advisory Board, anybody's willing to work on it, I think most of us would say that we need this. And do you get what we're saying? Define it a little better. And I'll put the last word in because I'm chair. I think we also need someone. So dredging is part of water, not the water we're talking about, but obviously it's water. A lot of the nitrates comes from the black mayonnaise smothering everything, I believe. So what we also need, and this is creative thinking on my part, not many people have seen that side of me. So if we need a position, okay, let's say we need to hire somebody. Wastewater management, the town water supply, we really also need someone to oversee dredging. And I'm not talking about the actual dredging, I'm talking about a person who says, it's been 5 years, got to get those permits in. And somehow in my mind, they're connected. And they're all part-time positions that in some way could be combined to be one position. I don't know, but actually, Nancy, you and I talked about this one time and said that they could help with shellfish too. Do you remember that? It was like a long time ago. I just saw you. So, yeah, just get some more input from personnel, Shellfish Advisory, I don't know. And since Helen has so many good ideas, and from Hillary, see how much time she seriously has for this. You can work on it with them,
With who exactly?
with the Water Advisory Board and what else are they called? I always,
The
the
water
water
commis-
people.
The water
commission.
commissioners do,
Okay, okay, but I'm just saying, if there's a need here and to work on it, and we're not gonna solve it tonight.
Well, are we making a motion, or we?
I don't know.
Doing no action?
I don't know, I don't know.
I
I
thought
think
you
we're
recommended it.
postponing it.
Didn't you recommend it? I
That
thought
was me
Kate,
personally.
Yeah, we did recommend it at first.
so you have a vote.
Janet,
Yeah, so we can postpone it and just get it written better. Not postpone it for the year, postpone it for another meeting.
I haven't said anything yet tonight, and it's going to be very short.
You don't want to adjourn, do you?
I didn't hear you.
Likes to do that.
I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
Nothing, I said, you don't want to adjourn, do you? That's what
I
you,
could
yeah.
what? It was a joke. Oh, it was a joke. I guess I didn't get it. Anyway, I agree with Justine, and I agree with Mac that this needs to have a little, job description needs to be updated. But there certainly needs to be a position for somebody to get together and get this thing on the road so that, we can get on with it, and with the 208 thing. I mean, we talk about all this and that, and we go around and around and around, and a lot of them have good ideas, but I think we need to get this position filled and move on.
Okay,
And
so,
I was just going to say one other thing. If, talking about sewers, if people listened to me 20 years ago, would have had sewers.
so I would like to suggest that we recommend this article to be placed on the town warrant, this amended article, that we save a space and that we recommend it. Help me out here with words. We
Janet.
recommend putting it on,
We
say,
recommend an insert
an insert,
with amended language.
yes.
Janet?
No, I'm
Second.
just, yeah, it's all second. We're going to continue talking about, I know how you feel. I know how,
No, I
Okay.
need to say something.
if this is about placing it.
Yeah.
All right.
With a number of other articles tonight, we have wanted to wait to see what the language would look at. What was the other one that got split?
Yeah,
I would like to see this, and I also have to say there are at least 4 inaccuracies in the summary, and that really needs to be
so that's why I
completely accurate.
recommended that you work on it with them.
With exactly who? Because
Alex, you and Alex work on it together.
when is the next meeting of the wastewater, comprehensive wastewater committee meeting?
And-
Through you.
I don't know. We failed to have a quorum for several
Yeah.
weeks.
You know, but also, you can also meet with the Board of Water Commissioners, Board of Health.
I would agree to meet with Alex, and don't worry, I won't yell at you if you don't yell at me.
She yells very softly.
And Hillary, if she, when she,
There's already a draft in the works right now.
Okay.
okay.
All right, good. So
I
let's
would
leave,
agree to
let's
meet
leave it
with
at that we
Hillary,
work on it and place
Hillary,
it.
Alex, and I, if that's agreeable to Hillary, sometime during the day, and we can coordinate with her.
And you also had a list of other boards to discuss, such as
Yeah.
personnel, so.
And Board of Health?
Get their recommendations. Well, that's Hillary,
Right.
if you talk with her. So, okay, so
No.
can I, is that motion made?
No, I move Article 35, Water Resources Director, be recommended by the Board of Selectmen and inserted on the town warrant with amended language.
Is there a second? Second for
Second.
Justina. All in favor? Okay, 3, 4, 1 against.
And what if it breaks into 2 separate articles?
It may. We still, this is why we're doing this early. We're starting this. We still have another,
Okay,
2,
so that
3 weeks.
motion
So,
means that it has to be all in one article.
so make another motion.
Okay, I move that we rescind the previous motion and vote. Is there a second? So we can have
second.
2 separate
Okay,
articles,
okay,
one for the
second.
water commissioners.
So now make
and
2
one-
separate motions.
No, because nobody seconded.
I just seconded it.
Thank you. I move that we
No, I can't second it. I can second it. I can
Yes,
make a
of course you
motion.
can.
It's a motion to reconsider
it's a
the previous
reconsider.
action. You
Yeah.
don't want to
Right.
rescind it because rescission is
Oh,
for a future
sorry.
meeting.
Yeah,
I move that we reconsider the previous action.
motion. Second. All in favor of reconsidering? Put it into two things, whatever,
Fails.
okay. It fails. Okay, moving on. Thank you guys for everybody's input, and I seriously thank all the water people. I said to Justina 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago, that being head chair of the water commissioner was the hardest job, so she retired and became a select person. Okay, old Shellfish Shack renovations. This is for a sum of $42,000 to fix up, no major changes in the building, that can't be done, it's just to fix up the building.
This is the maximum amount that we can do without having to go through a complete rehab that brings it up to ADA compliance and FEMA and all of that. So this would actually repair the roof and repair the siding on the building to make the building airtight.
We'll paint it a little bit, fix it up. May I have any questions or concerns from the Finance Committee?
Yes, this board,
Finance Committee?
oh, sorry.
Thank you,
I stuck that
Madam
in
Chair. The Finance Committee voted not to recommend this article by a vote of 5 to 0 to 1 abstention.
5 to 0 to 1. Any comments?
We don't see that this shack is being used at the moment, that it can in fact be made useful.
That's what we're going to do.
Well,
It is
we-
being
we don't-
used. It is being used. Shellfish uses it for making their cages and, help me out here, their cages and storage of equipment.
When you're ready, I'll.
Oyster row bags? Grow bags,
It's basically being used as storage, correct?
yes.
Just
But they-
yes or no?
yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right now, everything is at the sand pit outside. And so I think
Because it's an investment, a significant investment of money at this point, it would be good to have a workspace and storage inside.
Okay, I'm going to yield to Stephen, who may be able to put this
Well,
better than
I don't know. I remember one of our town meetings a long time ago when Barbara Echeverria rallied the forces and said, let's save that beach shack.
Yeah.
And town voted for it. And then there was an engineer's study done, I believe, that said that it's a waste of time and that you should tear it down.
So this is an ongoing question for
It
the
has no
Select Board.
historical value.
It's in a
Debatable.
compromised zone
Yes,
as far
So
as,
it's compromised, but that's one reason we're not changing it, but there's no plumbing presently. So in other words, it is being used. The Select Board has talked about this every year, twice a year for the last 3 to 5 years. We say tear it down, we say build it up. It is a building. Once it's gone, it is gone. We won't be able to replace it, we won't be able to rebuild. It is being used, we need the space. So that's why.
you asked for our recommendation.
yes.
That's our recommendation.
So, okay, moving on. We don't need to, do we need to discuss
Yeah.
this again? Okay.
Back in the fall, this board voted unanimously to get paperwork from the DPW and Justin Post,
We got
breaking
it.
down what it would take to do this minimum amount. The other thing I have to say is that although during that same meeting, our Shellfish Constable clarified that there was some minimal use for that space. The last time I went in there, which was within the last few months, none of that was going on in there. There was nothing stored in there, and it was pretty awful in there. And in fact, there was some shellfish involved activity going on, like with the envelopes and so forth. In the heated space, which is much nicer to work in the winter, that is the part of the Shellfish Beach Sticker building that isn't used in the winter. So I did hear you about storing stuff there, But the real question is, should we be putting any money into anything in the floodplain like that at all at this point? And I particularly mind that we never got anything back from the DPW and Justin Post about it. We just get this, lump figure, and we voted, we asked for it, and we didn't get it.
I just, we used it as a workshop. We used it as a workshop this summer, and then in the fall, it got completely closed and boarded over. So no, we're not storing anything in there, we're not using it. To be honest, like the best thing for us to use it for will be a workshop area, because we have some space inside the beach sticker shack, but that would be larger, and that workshop area. We need workspace, that's for sure.
So, Mr. Hort, didn't the Justin Post and the DPW weigh in on it? I thought they did.
Yeah.
They did, and they gave me an estimate that they could do $42,000
that's what I
worth
thought.
of materials, and the work would be done by TPW staff. Unfortunately, we don't have a facilities person right now.
Okay, but
So-
they have weighed in on it.
Yes, and it's just that we never got it.
Okay, I will send you
yeah.
the
Got
list
it.
of the wood that they're going to
got
purchase,
it.
so.
Okay.
Kathleen?
This was one of the first things that came to me when I was a selectman. There were two properties, the former COA building at 95 Lawrence Road and the old Shellfish Shack. And at that particular board meeting, both were unanimously voted by that board to be torn down. But for some reason, our exiting chairman at the time, Dennis Murphy, sought to bring back the Shellfish Shack for sentimental reasons. And it's an old building that, for a lot of people here in Wellfleet had, a sentimental attachment to. But having said that, for short money, $42,000, we can get a new roof, new siding, new windows, remediate the mold, and have a working place for the shellfish department. But my hope is in addition to having a working setup for them for grow bags and racks, is that guests and visitors to Wellfleet can visit that building and maybe see some, shellfish gear and paraphernalia and talk to the people down there. It's in an area where a lot of people go and visit, Mayo Beach, the pier, so on and so forth, and for too many years, it's looked pretty poor. So I'm in support of, renovating this, and I know it's in a floodplain, and until high water takes it, well, it's ours to work with.
Would you make a motion?
I move to recommend Article 36 to be inserted in the warrant.
Is there a second? A second. All in favor? Thank you. Oh, you're in favor of it?
Yes. You just voted to
Okay.
insert it in the warrant.
Insert it, yeah.
Recommend.
Oh, no, aren't we recommending it? Kathleen, aren't we recommending
said-
it and inserting?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're recommending and inserting.
But okay.
Okay, so yes, we are recommending and inserting. So this is where I'm going to ask, I know that the Housing Committee, I guess I got my times a little askewed. I assured them they'd be up by 7:30 or 8, or at 7 o'clock. Okay, so Housing is here. Chief, what number are you on? I'm trying to quickly do two things. I know that you've got one more request for you're the next one, okay. So, and then, who else is here for any particular, what are you here for? Yep, that we could take
Madam
these out.
Chair,
Yep.
the Finance Committee has recommendations for Article 37, Article 38, and then you can dismiss us.
Oh, okay, okay, you sure?
Yes.
All right, okay, good. So we'll move on to Article 37. Oh, that's going to take a long time. All right, we're just going to do we're just going to do the Finance Committee's recommendation. We're not going to discuss this at length.
Right.
Maybe, okay. Well, let's take the funding for medical training.
Well, Article 37 is a simple one. That's the acquisition of
I
3
know.
Kendrick and it's the same as last year.
Yeah,
So,
all right.
enough said.
That's all
Medic
you want to
training.
do? Okay.
Article 38. I had a discussion with the fire chief, and although this article did not originate with him, he feels that using this money as, say, a scholarship for one EMT already hired, one EMT who has already been hired, EMT firefighter, to attend, basically as a
Medic,
scholarship
yeah.
to attend paramedic training, is a potential recruitment tool. And given the difficulties at the moment that the fire chief is having with recruitment, he feels that any possible tool he can have is a good one. And he, if it's not spent, it's not spent. But as a tool, that is what we know.
Okay.
So that's the information I have, and I'll just let you know that we have not actually voted on that yet, and we will be dealing with that on Wednesday.
Okay, great, thank you. You may go. Do you want to adjourn? It's getting late, and I'm, 37, they said no, 8-0.
Correct, 8-0.
Yeah. Well, well.
Actually, I'm sorry, it's 6-0.
What abstained?
No, that's the attendance we had at the last meeting.
At those, okay.
Well, we voted to not recommend. We voted against
Okay,
recommending
0-6.
it.
Do you need to adjourn?
yeah.
We don't, because we're not
Yeah,
technically
yeah,
adjourned.
okay.
We
And
didn't
we're
hold the
not
meeting.
technically,
What?
We just did, it refers to another article, and I think we can,
Yeah, you've got to get back to us
the
anyhow.
math that,
Yeah, the fuel
on the
tank.
harbor was not
Tank
correct.
is off by
We'll deal.
$200,000.
The
We'll
the
deal
math
with
is, yeah, we're gonna deal with that
We're gonna have
probably
to-
at the end of
The what?
March. The
The
fuel
math was a
tank
little off.
article,
Fuel tank article.
the math.
Oh,
that
yeah,
on
yeah,
the
yeah,
sheet
yeah.
is
So you're going to
completely
get
off.
back to us anyhow about what
get
you're
back to
talking about on Wednesday. Good. Thank you for coming. Your input is really important, especially yours, Jeff. Silence is good sometimes. But anyhow, thank you. So seriously, I speak for the whole entire board that it's really important for us to hear from you guys. So thank you for coming.
We just might need time to be able to do
I
that
know,
right.
I know. It's hard. This whole thing, I mean, we're going to have 3-4 more meetings on all this, in ways.
we're meeting on
Discussion,
Wednesday
yeah.
and-
Not you guys, but yeah.
And we will still be dealing with this,
Yeah.
but not on the crazy meeting schedule we've
Yeah,
been having.
I know.
All right.
You going to the housing thing next week or next Thursday or tomorrow?
Tomorrow. No.
I'm not going to go there. Okay. Thank you. All right. Chief Polly, do you want to fight the Housing Authority for next slot, or we don't even, we can just vote our
At this
recommendation
point, I'm in
on
no
this?
mood to fight anyone.
Yeah.
So, the Article 38, as the chair of the Finance Committee said, I'll try anything right now.
Yeah.
And if the way I envision it, and I haven't had a chance to really, think this thing through, but if we have an opportunity to utilize that money for an individual, or maybe split it between 2 individuals to help them pay for their medic school, then we would use it in that particular year, and if there's no one there, or no one is seeking that money, then it would not be used.
Yeah.
Other departments have tried it in the past. They have had some success. They've stopped because there was a flood of paramedics available. Now we have no flood of
A dearth.
paramedics. So,
Yeah.
like I said, I'll try anything, but it's certainly up to the board.
So may I have a motion?
No, I want to speak on this. And I have to go through the town administrator, and maybe Chief Polly can answer some of this. I was the one that brought this article
Yeah.
forward. And the language in here is I don't like. I thought that we could, or can we, limit the personnel from Eastham to Orleans. Is that possible? You and I talked about that.
Well, the concept here is that we approve it for a medic training program, and then we'll bring the actual program back to the Board of Selectmen of how we're going to implement it. So if we decide that it's going to be from Provincetown to Eastham, then that'll be the Board of Selectmen's decision to make.
Okay, because I think that's important, that we don't have people from Harwich and Brewster who would have to take all this time to get back down here. So I think it's very important that maybe we limit it to like Provincetown,
Agreed.
maybe to Eastham. And as you know, Chief Polly's already said that paramedics are in great demand now. Should this, by the way, read paramedic or just medic?
The proper term would be paramedic.
Yeah, so we should put paramedic in there instead of medic, right? And I think it's a good, and the other thing is that we talked about is limiting that they would have to serve the town for X amount of time and pay that money back at some point in time. That has to be worked on also.
Yes, yeah, that'll be part of the program that's brought to you.
Right, and then if they left early, there would be some.
They'd have to reimburse the town
Have to
proportionally.
reimburse the town, yeah. So
Yes.
I just think those things have to be put in place. But I think it's a great program, and who knows, maybe other fire departments will pick our language up. Because paramedics are at a premium. We've already lost 2 this year. And Brewster, I know, is looking for paramedics, and I don't know, it seems like most departments are. They're at a premium. So anyway, we're going to work on the language, and we'll get it together before we go to town meeting. All right, thank you.
So may I have a motion?
I move that we insert Article 38, funding for paramedic training program into the annual town warrant.
Insert and recommend. Insert and recommend.
And recommend, yes.
Second?
All in favor? Okay, thank you. So now we're going to take out of turn Article 42. Did everyone get the revised? This is probably kind of late, but it,
Well, you actually have Article 41, 42, and 43.
say that again?
I gave him.
We're taking this out of
Yeah.
turn, out of order.
Start with 41.
Well, they're revising it. Are you giving me, you're not giving, we got,
I don't know what you have.
okay.
We have a warrant.
Dan,
Did you change the
No.
language in the?
No.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I think I got, did you change? This is the right one, right? Dan gave it to us. I don't need to.
This is
Save the
Article
paper.
42.
This is just 42. We're doing 42.
You don't want to do 41, Jim?
All right. Okay, I had this,
Disposition of town land to housing authority, 41.
well, they all kind of, so I haven't really read this that much. This is all kind of, oh, that's for the other 2 parcels.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can do that.
Madam Chair, if I
Yeah.
can just give you a little bit of an update. So your policy of when you have a possible disposition of town-owned property is first to open it up for comments from anybody, the general public or any other committee, board, or staff member. Those comments came into me. I then gave them to the planning board, and they are to issue a recommendation on the 4 articles that we have here. The planning board has not done that yet. They have it on their agenda for tomorrow night. So I think you could certainly insert and recommend tonight, and if you had any change of opinion based on the planning board recommendation, you could always revisit it.
Okay,
Revisit it.
thank you. Come closer to the microphone, please.
Sure thing. Gary Sorkin from the Housing Partnership. We actually met with the planning board the week before, and they voted 4-0 in favor of Article 42, which is the transfer of 95 Lawrence.
Yeah, but now we're on Article 41, which is the disposition of the 2 smaller
I'm
lots
sorry, I misunderstood.
off of Chequesset. Did they give any recommendation on that?
I believe so.
Okay,
I think
not
it's
yet.
only
Okay.
on the Lawrence Road project.
Okay. So we're now discussing 41. I was going to skip to the big one, but we should just go back because you're here for that too. So this is the disposition of the 2 parcels off of Chequesset to go to the Housing Authority. Any questions, discussion from the board? Helen?
So the Board of Health didn't get back to you about this?
No.
Were they, okay.
Right.
And Conservation Commission?
Are you talking about the recommendations?
Yeah.
If I have a recommendation from a committee, it's listed there. And I have no recommendation from those committees as of yet.
So,
Yeah,
well, okay.
yeah.
So there is always a problem every town meeting that certain boards get forgotten or lost with it being asked for recommendations. So that's something at this time I'm writing all these notes down, we could review. I mean, that was with the previous article too on the water commissioner thing, that Helen had a nice list of people. So, all right, do you want to postpone this then?
No, well.
Didn't you just say you wanted to postpone it, or Jerry did?
Yeah, because of that one lot, right, I really want to hear from the Board of Health and Conscom, and Gary
Okay.
actually has an
Well, we
answer.
can also change our vote. We can vote to insert it.
If you'd like to defer, but I believe both the Health Commissioner and the Conscom did have comment on the two lots. I don't want to speak for them, but the health agent was supportive, and Conscom was questioning the one and supporting the other.
All right, so we need that information. So let's have a motion to insert. Is that good? And we'll hold off on recommendation.
I move Article 41 be inserted in the warrant, reserving recommendation before town meeting.
Second?
All in favor? Thank you. Okay, so 42, so this is the one where I actually found your new wording really confusing, so, but maybe you could explain it while I so yeah, you can explain it, Gary.
Sure. Dan and I and Janet had met with some other members from the housing committees a week or so ago and said, let's make sure we're on the same page and we're marching down this project. And I think most people are supportive about the intent of it. So the question became, should we transfer the land or should the town retain ownership of the land? But still, in concert with the housing committees and any other appropriate town groups, that they would form some kind of an action committee to put out an RFP and develop the land for affordable and community housing. So Dan, late on Thursday, had given us a draft of an article that essentially said that the town would retain ownership, but that between 4 and 6 acres would be put out for community housing, development of community housing. In the intervening couple of days between then and now, we had a chance to review it with a Wellfleet, a person who owns a home in Wellfleet is a very well-known attorney in the housing area in Boston. And he said, gee, it's a little confusing to the average voter. What we ought to do is maybe add something that says, the first thing was, we're not touching the water tower and the ball field, to allay people's fears about that, number one. Number two is that there's no definition of what community housing is, but actually there is in the regulations.
Yeah.
And so he cited that down here. And that's what the intent of these couple of lines on the bottom of number one. They are simply citing the Massachusetts laws that define what community housing are.
Okay.
And number two is, I think, largely unchanged. And then we just added a draft, and obviously this is subject to yours and Dan's final writing, but to try and explain to people what it is that we are doing, which is essentially, town's going to retain ownership of the land. They're going to lease that land potentially to a developer. Just FYI, my understanding is this is what Eastham did, and in the Truro situation, they have retained the option of either transferring the land or leasing it. So it's not inconsistent with practice.
So that's the question. So you say they have the choice of transferring or leasing. Who would they transfer it to?
In that case, to the
To
developer.
the developer,
Right,
okay.
not to-
That's
not to the
that's my
housing
clear.
authority. And in the case of Truro, we know that it was the town that issued the RFP to develop the land and not the housing authority. And under this, it would be essentially the town in concert with the housing committees, and whether it be the building needs committee or the planning board or whoever else you think may be right for it. It's just that we're suggesting that we tell people that's what we're doing. And the other important thing is that we are doing it for community housing, which is both affordable, moderate, which means 100% of median income and market rate, as well as a combination of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. So when we talk about retaining EMTs, it's possible that our EMTs or other folks who work in, we have a big problem with turnover. Other folks who work for the town could be living in this facility.
So just reading section 1.
Yep.
This is a long sentence. This is like the 4th time. So you're transferring, it states for the audience, transfer the care, custody, and control of the parcel of land located at 95 blah, 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 map blah, from the board or official having care.
Okay, can I explain it for you?
Yes, we're going to go piece by piece. So, okay, so from the board or official having care.
I might defer to Dan on this, but
Okay.
the first part of this article is simply to say that if anyone else in the past had some control
Okay.
or responsibility for it, we're taking that responsibility and control and putting it on the selectmen.
Okay, good. That's my question about, yeah. And then the second part is all about leasing it, is authorizing the lease.
Right.
The first part gives the authority to the Board of the Selectmen. So that's what the purpose is of paragraph 1. And then the second paragraph says that at least 4 acres, but not more than 6, are permitted to be leased out for community housing. So that gives the Select Board the opportunity or the authority to lease the property for up to a 99-year lease.
So do you guys think that the first sentence can be simplified, or is it just me?
I think that was, Dan borrowed it from a previous
I'm thinking
motion.
of town meeting.
Of Article 1, of the
Of the
paragraph
number
1?
1, yeah.
We can put a period in there somewhere.
Okay. I'm just thinking of town meeting, trying
Sure.
to get that going. Kathleen had her hand up.
Just a couple of things, Madam Chair, through you to Gary Sorkin. Are you going to be using a map with regard to the parcels that you hope to provide community housing on? Right now, that seems a little ambiguous here.
We
No
do have
less-
a sample map.
No less than 4, no more than 6. Okay. And-
Yes, we do have a sample map. I'm happy
Okay.
to share it with you.
I'm at a town meeting. Yeah.
Yes.
So why don't you tell the audience when your forum meeting and presentation is?
I have another question, Janet.
Okay.
Now I can
just-
insert a little
because-
commercial and say that on March 18th, at this very same COA, sponsored by the Wellfleet Forum, we are having a session about planning for Lawrence Road, and it definitely includes what pieces of property are being discussed, what types of housing that we're talking about, and as well as getting input from the community. So again, it's 7 o'clock on March 18th, a Monday night here at the COA.
Okay, and also, neither in our draft warrant or the revised article that you've given us, do we have the recommendations that have already been made? Could you state those for us, please?
Sure, no recommendation. Let me go back and give you the timeline. We first got this late Thursday night, So no committee has had an opportunity,
Okay.
including the housing committees, to have a formal vote on it. We meet again on Thursday, the Housing Authority and the Housing Partnership, for our recommendations, and then I don't know what other committees it will be sent to, but.
Planning board,
Right.
finance committee?
Again, the planning board did vote 4-0 unanimously to support the development of Lawrence Road for affordable housing, for community housing.
And finance committee?
The finance committee deferred.
Any other committees people might suggest?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so one of the most important committees, because this is one of the most important committees, and I already sort of passed this under the nose of Jim Hood, who's the chair of the Water Commissioners, is, this is a sizable number of units. Now, Elaine McElroy, the chair of the Housing Authority, is coming back over the weekend.
She is indeed.
And she and I and Hillary, with Hillary's help, I think year before last, ran all the numbers on gallons per day for fewer units than may be possible on that piece of land. So that spreadsheet is available to you. Elaine has it, okay? And the water commissioners, it's probable that it will be fine. But if you're going to put that many units on it, you have to know that the water system can tolerate that.
Jim's looking
Can
into it.
I,
Yes. Second thing,
can I respond to the order?
yeah,
I've had a couple of conversations with Jim Hood from the Water Commissioners, and he has sent a request to environmental partners to get a authorization or a report that says, yes, it can support X number of units.
I'm sorry, these numbers are already available, okay? And Elaine has them.
Not for that amount.
So I want to
hold
also
on.
just,
And I
to
understand.
simplify the process, this is the request for transferring to the select board and then to lease. And the main reason we're starting it this way is because they need to go out for a request for an RFP, right? And when the prospective developer comes back, we also need what his suggestion is. So there are those numbers. You guys have the numbers for how many bedrooms there can be already. And if Hillary's already given them the numbers and the committees the numbers. So this is also just to get it going because it may change by the time a developer comes back with it.
Madam Chair, I understand that. We're talking now about what other committees have to give recommendations. The second one is the school committee.
We've
Wait.
already been before the
Okay,
school committee.
good. So the second question I have for you is when I asked when I was at the meeting with Laura Schufelt, the Housing Authority meeting. You're going to lease the actual places where the structures will be from the town. Are you not, you're not considering subdividing, or are you, that lot?
No.
No.
I
So,
prefer to do it,
Wait,
but
what lot? Yeah, what?
This change from having the town retain ownership of the land, if I understand it correctly, and Dan, please, means that we don't have to go through some subdivision effort, and that the town would own all of the land associated with it and would just lease a portion of that land to the developer for the purpose of housing.
right, that was an important thing that was not determined yet at that Housing Authority meeting. Right, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Powers.
Just a clarification, the planning board is going to be discussing all 4 articles tomorrow night regarding disposition of town land. They did have a discussion with housing advocates at their last meeting, but that question is on their agenda tomorrow night as well.
Okay, great. May I have a motion?
I
Any other
move to
discussion?
insert Article 42.
Wait, hold on, Justina's got her hand up.
Thanks. I was at the Truro presentation of Cloverleaf at your Housing Authority meeting that you were kind enough to invite us, and I wanted to say how inspiring it was and how inspiring this is going to be for Wellfleet. And I have a quick question. I'm totally in support of this and of you guys who are going to be working so hard to make it happen. Were it possible to get 40 units on there, or a good number of units, would you be amenable to also trying for a goal like a youth center, a community center?
I think it's premature to say what the requirements are.
Sure, and you don't have to answer it.
Right, it's premature, and we shouldn't say,
Yeah.
you know, we shouldn't prejudge what we want from a developer.
Yeah.
But we hope to have, once it passes town meeting, a visioning effort to say, have a number of community meetings, meetings with other people, select board obviously, to say, well, what do you want?
Sure.
And
I mean,
then what can we have?
I understand the goal is community housing.
Right.
But I just, for my own obsessions, wanted to ask you that. And thank you very much for this.
Sure.
I was going to suggest that at the forum meeting, someone writes down the suggestions or questions people have, and that either at town meeting, if they have a good suggestion, or a community center, a common area, right? That's what I think they're called now even, include that in your presentation.
Right, we heard that from the Truro folks, that you
Okay.
can't specify it
You can't do
for
that.
seniors, but that you can
No,
decide.
no, just you can have a communal area.
It's what Gary's
A
saying
common
to you, it's
area.
too premature before an RFP to try and include that.
No, but,
Yeah.
yes, no, but if you're going to say that we're going to have, I want to get the right language.
I mean, for the forum.
No, you get it for the forum. I just said you want to hear what the forum has to say and include that
In their next visioning.
loosely in your comments at town meeting. Because you can't say, we're going to have this. You're going to say, we envision this, or we envision that, or we envision, hopefully, you can't designate that senior housing, but you
not
can
legal.
say, we're hoping seniors can be there, that sort of thing. You know what I mean, right? Just for selling points.
All right, go back to a motion.
Go back to a motion.
I move that we recommend and insert Article 42.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Yay. Hands, please. Big, exciting hands, huh? Okay.
Thank you so much.
It's late at night.
This is going to be great for Wellfleet.
Why are you using environmental partners? Using what? I'll tell you later.
Doing what? Oh, okay. I did, that's not.
Madam Chair,
$1.
Yes.
of your remaining articles, Article 43, I'm withdrawing. I should not have had that in. It was a copy and paste from the last town meeting.
Yes.
And you
yes.
could probably do Articles 44 through 49 all as one. Those are just standard articles that we do every year.
And they're housekeeping, aren't they?
Yeah.
So before we get.
Thank you, guys. Sorry. At least you don't have to drive far.
Thank you very much. So before we get to the housekeeping articles, can I bring up something about an article that isn't on here that Dan and I had a clarifying exchange about?
If it's not on here, can it be, is it on our
Yes,
agenda?
it was proposed, it was a thought to have it on the warrant. We're doing the warrant. So if you remember, there's a way in which you can get the room tax funds coming in to a dedicated fund for a variety of things. And I, of course, would be completely for using them to mitigate water for the 208 plan. But I said to Dan, well, shouldn't we have this on here? So it's a commitment sort of statement, right? But wait, Dan explained to me that we can take the funds in and bring them into the general fund and then put them into that kind of fund later, that we don't need to decide it with a warrant article at this ATM. Did I explain that right?
Yes, any
Yeah.
cash that's received through the Airbnb tax, as it's called, will end up in free cash at the end of the year. And at that point, we'll have a better idea of how much we'll actually receive from that tax. And we can't spend any of the money that comes in as free cash. That can only be appropriated by town meeting. So at that point in the 2020 annual town meeting, we could both decide what we wanted to do with the money that came in that year. And then we could decide if we wanted to designate it to specific purposes, like 25% for housing and 25% for a capital improvement
Dredging,
stabilization fund and X% for wastewater, or however we wanted to do that. But I think we're about a year away from actually having to make that decision.
It's similar to CPC, the way the CPC funds are handled, that they come from a tax, but yet they're always designated, a certain amount goes to housing. That there is, housing is a section of it, but that we always designate a certain amount to it.
What Dan is saying, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, through you, what Dan is saying, though, is that isn't going to happen when we do the first intake.
Right.
So I'm just a little worried. I just want lots and lots of alternative systems. That's what I want, because that's in the bare bones that we have of this incomplete so far 208 plan. And I want it to be clear that the town is committed to mitigating pollution in those ways so as not to have to do
Well,
a sewer
this is a
system.
discussion for another time.
Right.
This is not on the agenda.
So, okay, but do we all feel that we shouldn't do that now? That's the real issue.
Right now, tonight,
Yeah.
we can't do it tonight. It's
No,
not
we
on-
don't have language, right, tonight.
We can't even talk about it. It's not on the agenda. We're just talking about what's on the warrant.
I thought we were discussing what could be on the warrant or not. Anyway, point is,
All right,
I
I
can
see
drop
that.
it.
All right,
Yeah, I
yeah.
can drop
We
it.
can talk about this at our meeting next week.
That would be good.
I'll put it on the 12th so
Yeah.
that you can
Thank you.
discuss it.
Kathleen?
Just want to clarify with Helen, Madam Chair, you're referring to the proposed bylaw that has been bandied about with the APCC and,
Actually,
is that what you're referring to? We discussed this briefly at our last meeting.
I'm going to say that that got her thinking, or got us all thinking about it.
no, it
No?
was
All
at, the Cape Cod Select Board and Commissioner, councilman's meeting over almost a year ago, when this first came up, right? And Julian Sear
So
was talking about.
we're all talking about the same thing, so we'll
Yeah.
discuss it at our next
Later,
meeting next
later.
week. I think it's on the
Thank you.
agenda, or I wanted it on the agenda. Okay, unclassified articles. What's this one about?
So you can remove Article 43, that was placed there by me in error.
Okay,
And
good.
then
And we're going to
Articles,
move 44 through 49 as housekeeping. General housekeeping articles, Madam Chair?
Is that an official motion? I thought it said
Yes,
emotion.
it is. It is an official motion.
Okay, is there a
I'm
second?
moving Article 44 through 49 to be inserted in the warrant as printed
and recommended?
and recommended, yes, sir.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, great.
Ooh, wait.
Where are we? Are we done yet?
The only other thing we have on your agenda is if you have already approved these minutes, the executive session minutes from January 22nd, 29th, and February 1st. If you would move to release those were just dealing with my contract negotiations. So.
I move that we release the executive session minutes of January 22nd, January 29th, and February 1st of 2019.
Second? All in favor?
And it'll say on them that we approve
Good.
them, right, Dan?
Yes, yes.
And also, the next time we have an executive session, we have to approve the minutes during that meeting for the meeting when we approve them, right?
I move we adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Say aye. Thank you.
Aye.
All I